Hello, one and all. Do not adjust your streaming device. You are having a crisis. It is I, Crisis with a K, streaming live from a particularly gray and rainy day here in Wellington, New Zealand. I am back after a brief hiatus, but guess what? We're picking up just where we left off because I have so many pull lists to go over with you, and you've told me do not skip any. We need to hear your opinions, and sometimes shouting about every single comic that there is and ever will be. So that's what we're going to do. And of course, as always, we start right with a bang with my top comic series of 2025 so far, and this is as of April 23rd, because that is the week of comics that we are talking about today, because I am a whole month behind. We'll see what we can do about that, but let's get into it. What are my top 12 comic series of 2025 so far? Here we go. At number 12, Green Lantern Corps. It's just, I forgot to set the timer. It's been so long, I don't know where any of the buttons are or what the customs are in this place. Okay, let's start the timer. So number 12, Green Lantern Corps. This just really works for me every week. It's a whole cast of Green Lanterns minus Hal Jordan. How could you go wrong? Number 11, Ghost Box, which has a final issue already out, but I haven't read it yet because it's from April 30th, so I don't know yet. A new or at least returning entrant into my top 10. Number 10, Eddie Brock Carnage, which we'll talk about today because it was part of the April 23rd polls. Jump Scare, which we know how much I love this horror-themed hero from Cullen Bunn. Doctor Strange of Asgard, a great book with beautiful Carlos Mango art, finally inked and colored the best possible way. A new entrant today, and we get to talk about it today. Solomon Kane, written and drawn and colored by Patrick Zurcher, is blowing me TF away. I love it so much. Then we have a lot of familiar faces. The Tin Can Society from Giant Generator, Absolute Superman, Hope Corps by Jason Aaron, Nice House by the Sea, which I love so much that I actually finally bought the deluxe hardcover of Nice House by the Lake because I wanted to start binging it again. The Avengers actually, I think, going up a rank from where it was, and I did not expect this week's to hit me that hard. Batman Dark Patterns, of course, at number 2, and of number 1. What could be better than FML by Kelly Sue DeConnick, David Lopez, Chris Peter, and Clayton Cowles. But folks, that's not all. It's the only thing we do at the top of the show. No. Then we talk about the picks of the week. Then I say hello. It's all coming back to me. Now I don't know how that song actually goes. I know it's by Celine Dion. I cannot remember the actual melody. Okay, so here are my picks of the week. The picks I thought would be the picks when I first looked at the lineup of this poll list, and then the picks that they wound up being after we did some reading for DC. I thought my pick of the week was going to be Absolute Martian Manhunter. I wrote a whole ass song about it when I read the first issue. But no, it was Green Lantern number 22. The Lantern line is working me out right now. I love it so much, and I'm not a historic Lantern fan. For Marvel, I thought my pick of the week would be Eddie Brock Carnage, which clearly was really good because it's in my top 10. But actually, my favorite book of this week was Avengers Academy, finally coming through for me with all of the quality that I love and everything I adore about Olivier's writing. For Image, I thought my pick of the week would be the Power Fantasy again, although you will notice it is not in my top 12 this week. My favorite was actually Bug Wars, a prior top 12 comic that had fallen out, so we'll talk about why there was a fall and a rise here with those two. And then Indies of the week, I assumed it would be out of Alcatraz because I loved that first issue so much. It was a perfect 5 out of 5. I still liked issue number 2, but Solomon Kane just worked me out this week. I loved it so much. It was absolutely my favorite indie book of the week and quite possibly my favorite issue of the entire week. Okay, so let's do some greetings of the chat, shall we? Okay, who's all here? Well, people started, there was an avalanche of comments starting with last night, so let's work through it quickly. Superjob, who is a regular, back by Dope Demand. Logan Wayne, hello to. These all happened before I even went to bed. So these are eight hours ago. Patrick Borgeld saying, see me in 8 hours. Super Panda saying, yay, glad to see I am back. And we'll get to it. That might be the moment of crisis. Bunkmaster, who was even in the top 5 this week, but that's okay. He didn't know this was happening because I broke my streak, so he broke his streak. Jarn Parles, hello. Oh my God, it's Peter. Hello. Mall 360, yes, I am back. Hello to Earth Geomancer. Cool Angel saying that my prescription that the hair and makeup team would take a full hour sounded encouraging. I think we went a little too fiercely on the nose contour, but I mean, it's a good drag nose contour. I think it's an outstanding drag nose contour. For streaming about comic books, slightly too fierce. Kane saying good afternoon to everyone. Hello to Kane, and we'll get to some of those other comments. I don't want to blast off with that. Edward Billy just finished Omar's AMA over at Mint Condition and now here for Krisis. Helen, welcome back to you. You have now also become a regular. Next, we need to convince you to have some sort of favorite comic in your profile picture. Ryan Bragg is here. Hank, who I got to see for just a moment before he drifts off to sleep. I'm so happy that I did. James Abel, who's doing the Purple Monkey loading dance. Tori Amos, of course, mentions Purple Monkey several times in her songs. And Chris, first time here. Welcome aboard, Chris. Some of us are referred to as crushers, but we're always workshopping it. Always enjoy hearing me on near mint condition. That is so, so kind of you, Chris. Stephen Patterson is here, who is so kind to share his thoughts with me, even in between streams on other networks. And I truly mean that. Matt H is excited to catch me live. Saz Murph is here. Nathan Stevenson is glad that I am back. I'm glad that you're here. Can I give my opinion on last week's One World Under Doom number 4? No, I can't, because I'm only talking about One World Under Doom 3 in this batch. I have not read past April 23rd yet, so I truly do not know the future that has transpired over the past month of comic books. Please do not spoil me. Nick N, have I given any more thought to a patron meet and greet? Yes. But you know, one step in front of the other, 1 foot at a time. I've had the Jack Gaming. Oh snap! Always on my own Krisis. Well, it's always me if it's Krisis. It's me. You don't have to worry. Max Appelman, who put out a fantastic Beetle Bop just about 9 or 10 hours ago of one of my all-time, I was going to play it, but I'm in an alternate tuning, of one of my all-time favorite Beatles songs, Across the Universe, which he didn't have to like interpolate too much for this one, because Across the Universe, like all the gold is there, but he still found a way. I loved, you know, in the actual Across the Universe, there's a lot of compound time. There's like a couple of measures to 5/4, which at that time was relatively unusual. The Beatles did much more, and of course, Here Comes the Sun. But I think for a player like Max, who's a jazz player, it lets him play with kind of like hanging on certain notes and cadences a little bit more, and it doesn't even feel unusual or jazzy, because Across the Universe just does that. So please go to Max's channel. Hey, Johnny's here. I finally got to stream with Johnny. Last week we did a Fantastic Four Evergreen show in near mint condition. I think it was very, very good. And you know, we were a little bit friendly, but you know, when it comes to Fantastic Four, we're talking about family. I know that was supposed to be a Fast and Furious quote, but I've never seen any of the movies. So I was so happy I finally got to hang out live. Anna May is here. Glad to see me back. Oh my gosh, you are all being incredibly, incredibly kind. Michael Wesleus is here saying that it's great that I'm back. Bunkmaster's getting ready to leave. He's always getting ready. He's always leaving on a jet plane at the beginning of the stream, and then he gets back and he's like, "You're still streaming? I'm hoping it's going to be shorter today," but you never know. TaylorMade, good to see you. Yes, it's a very busy season. Good day to my Australian friend Reaper XC. You know, asking me to crush you. That's how a lot of search results have wound up on crushing Krisis over the years. I've seen the wild side of things that people want to be crushed by via Google search terms. Logan Wayne, oh, we already said hi to you, but I'm happy to say hi again. I was aiming to say hello to Stoops. Hello to you. Omnibo is here. Hello, my friend. One Wheelchair X, who originally I was going to do a video with this week. He will be one of the next guests on the channel if I have my druthers, whatever a druther is. But I'm just a little too crazy trying to catch up right now. But an X-Men specific stream coming to you whenever there's actually time in both of our lives. Because keep in mind, he is in the UK. So we are like the complete opposite times. But it's going to happen very, very soon. Hello to Samantha Jane. I don't know if I'm going to get my run in today because the weather is pure Wellington here right now, which I guess means it could have a complete turnaround. But we had a very high wind risk warning, which if they actually think to warn you about the wind in Wellington, the wind is intense. What up to you as well, Hayden? I am so into this tournament of All-Stars. Let me tell you, as uninterested as I was, it actually got me so back into Drag Race. I watched all of season 17, which was meh, but I am intensely invested in All-Stars. Okay, here is a link that's in the chat to Beetlebop number 20, which you could also just find by searching YouTube for that across the universe. It's from our friend, the human Cerebro, James Abel. Matt, the Beatles are overrated. That's the kind of take that's going to make you very welcome on this channel. Not about the Beatles in specific, because I do love the Beatles, but I mean that kind of, that bravery, that fortitude to just fling those thoughts out there. That's what we really appreciate here on Crushing Krisis. And well, yes, so excited to stream with One Wheelchair X. Well, before we even get to my moment of crisis, I think I have to talk about some breaking comic news. And I'm so sorry if I'm the bearer of this bad news to you and you have not seen it yet. But we learned in the last 24 hours that legendary comic creator Peter David has passed away after a long series of health struggles. Of course, Peter David, when I think of him, I don't only think of the first comic creator I saw that I shared a name with, but I think about how his comics were there already when I got into comics. From his run on Spider-Man and his run on Incredible Hulk, which was already ongoing, but that his run on X Factor kind of welcomed me and very quickly became one of my favorite comics. And then when I came back to comics in 2010, there was Peter David again, writing X Factor again. He had such a knack of finding the core of humanity in his characters, which truly is my favorite thing that a writer can do in big two superhero comics, which is like write the fun plot, give us all the villainy, but always every time a character speaks, make sure it's coming from a voice that's distinctly theirs. It's a thing I complain about all the time people don't do. And Peter David delivered that to you in almost every issue that he ever created. So, you know, it's a hard thing. We're getting to a point now in our lives where the comic creators who defined a lot of these comics of the 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s and 2000s, we're losing them, some of them far too soon. It would have been great to have Peter David with us for many years to come. But you know what? We have an amazing body of work of his that we can always go back to. He has defined so many characters indelibly. He's made so many people happy, and his family will always hold him in their thoughts. And so I ask that we all hold them in our thoughts today. Truly, truly a comic book legend. And as Edwin Billiot points out, a Star Trek novelist. I've never read any Star Trek novels. We have well established on this show that I love Star Trek, but I will only watch Star Trek screen media. I do not want it delivered to me in any other fashion. And so I have not read any Star Trek novels. A lot of wonderful comments on Peter David. Let me just highlight a couple. Buttery Flaky Crust is here, loving these live shows streaming on iPad while we prep for dinner. That's where I really watch the most of my YouTube. I don't watch much YouTube because I am just so busy constantly all the time. The one time I have a chance to catch up on anybody's YouTube, drag or comics usually, is when I'm cooking dinner, because we cook some pretty hardcore gourmet dinners in this house. Even like an easy dinner is usually over an hour of cooking. And then I did one last week that was like 2 or 3 hours. And so that's my YouTube / podcast time. And that's when I catch up on everybody. So I love that I can be that for some of you. Yeah, Hayden, Drag Race fatigue is real. Can't wait for more Dragula, but I think they just finished productions on a Titans season. So that's not quite back yet. Yeah, I mean, as we all know, I could full time have a Drag Race thing. The thing is, I don't mind commenting on drag in writing, like on my blog, without being in drag. But I think if you're going to get on YouTube and critique a drag queen, you better be in full beat makeup in order to like critique them so you can be critiqued back. I just firmly believe that. I don't believe you can critique drag live on camera if you can't do drag live on camera. And I actually, on Reddit, responded to a post about Monet Exchange, one of my favorite drag queens, her makeup, which is, I literally study it like a map to the Holy Grail every week when she's on YouTube. And I described like all the specific things about her makeup because I literally tried to do the things. And I got like 500 upvotes overnight. And that was making me feel real confident about this nose this morning. Let me tell you, that was not a good plan. Okay. Letter has been following your condition for about 4 months, which introduced me to me and my channel. That's so kind of you. I'm so happy you're here, LSDR. Yeah, and you know, it's funny, we were on that Fantastic Four stream on Thursday, and both Johnny and Lynn's, who's amazing. If you have not subscribed to Lynn's Soapbox, it's like Lynn's Soapbox, but just one S on Lynn's, then another on Soapbox, you'll figure it out. She was like, I grew up watching you, Omar, which made us all crumble to dust. But also, it's like, wow, like people have been with Omar since the very first video. People have been with Omar since 4 months ago, and the community is incredibly inclusive. And that's why I love being part of Near Mint Condition. We are not a comic book community that is trying to exclude anybody except for hateful people. And that's it, really. Well, I'm really fierce about excluding them. Omar, you know, he may be, they might be sneaking around in the margins over there. Okay. And Cool Angel actually knew Peter David first from Babylon 5, the Soulmates episode, which I have because I love Babylon 5, but I don't remember that one in particular. And next to Imagina, who's my friend in liberal politics. Look, this is a liberal show. I'm sorry. I'm a liberal person. And part of why I came back to YouTube is to be a liberal in front of you, wearing my makeup in a non-God honoring way. Sorry about it. But that's a Trixie Mattel joke. But yeah, talking about like, Peter David's health problems were in part because he was dropped by, I forget if it was Medicare or Medicaid, which is absurd. He was in the greatest need of his life at that point. And, perhaps the same outcome would have happened the same way. And perhaps the first 24 hours isn't the best time to talk about that. People always say, don't politicize somebody's death. Let me tell you what, if I ever die, which could maybe happen or not, who knows, absolutely politicize my death. I am now granting you blanket permission to politicize my eventual death. Okay, Lance McNair is here also saying rest in peace. It's interesting. I just had things to say apparently. I used to always think that rest in peace was like kind of a ghoulish thing to say because I think I associated it with like Halloween tombstones, and I got that it meant RIP meant rest in peace, but I didn't see it as a friendly thing. Like I saw it as like, oh damn, you're a ghost now. Like I didn't really see it as like something you would say that would be like peaceful or comforting to somebody. And then I realized that was just my weird neurodivergent brain who read it that way because I first associated it with Halloween. And now I learned I like rest in power, which I know can feel a little trite, but it's, to me, because it's something that people say a lot about when people of color, queer people die, just say like, don't just rest in peace, rest in the power that you have and had and deserved to wield throughout your life. And I like rest in power because it's like, I want to remember all of the things that person empowered me to feel and find joy in or commiserate in. And that's the power that they have in death as they do in life. And so I don't want somebody, I do want them to rest in peace, but I want to rest in the power of knowing how they impacted my life. So a lot of times when I just read RIP, like in my brain, I think rest in power. James coming through with James Abel. Oh, that's his name, right? Again, it's been a while. That's Linda's soapbox. I would love to do a stream just with her sometimes. She's so well read, like, which isn't a surprise. Anybody can be well read, but I love that she she went in deep. She's like, oh yeah, I started Fantastic Four from issue number 1. I'm the kind of person that if I'm going to start something, I start from the start. That is not a requirement to enjoy comic books, but that really impressed me. And Johnny is very, very similar. He's got a podcast called Biff Bam Power. He is on YouTube, but he doesn't post all the episodes onto YouTube. Well, then maybe we could twist his arm and get him. Dude, they don't have to be video episodes, Johnny. It's just YouTube is a platform where people spend their time before dinner, as we were learning. But you can stream it on Spotify. He has incredible guests. He had Bendis on. He had the rest. I just looked through it all last week, and some of them are escaping me. But he has comic creators on all the time, and then he had Dom of X for like this huge Krakoa, like arc by arc retrospective. He does really, really cool stuff, and speaks at a legible speed, which I know I don't. I would need to downgrade the speaking speed if we went back to podcasting. So many Peter David comments. And we have a promise here that they are, I never got to ask you on the show, do you like more of a soft J, Johnny, right? Because most of the I'm Italian, and most of the Italians in my life, if they're Gianni, they want the hard G. They want G, Ani. And I never asked you, and that was not kind. I really take people's names seriously. So I apologize, but you can inform us in the comments here, and then everybody watching this show will know. Okay, do we need a moment of crisis? I guess we do. We have a little moment of crisis, and then we'll get to the books. Okay, let's see. Okay, so I kind of know what I'm going to talk about. I didn't rehearse it. I just in my head know that this moment of crisis. Oh wait, let's see if we got that Johnny pronunciation. I don't want to leave everybody hanging. No, he hasn't answered yet. Okay, so if you remember back to the first one of the year, I can't remember if it's the hidden one or not. My moment of crisis was this idea of resolve, repair, recover, right? And I said that's what I was going to keep with me for the year, which is this idea that you can't just fix the thing and be fixed. That is not a thing that just happens in the world, right? You've got to decide how you're going to fix it, what you're going to do to fix it, how your life is going to change. That's the resolve. Then you got to take the time to actually repair it. Like if you're just going to be like, I resolve to jog every day. I resolve to eat better. I resolve to read more comic books. I resolve to spend more time with my family. That's a nice resolve, but the repair is like putting the plan into action. Where are those hours getting carved out? How are those attitudes changing and practice in your life? And then wait, where was recover? I'm so confused. Is recover before repair? Oh no, then recover comes after. I don't know. James knows what order it goes in. But my point is that it's not just this pithy thing that I've been saying on the stream for 5 months now. It's something I'm actually trying to apply to my life this year. Because let me tell you, in past years, if I missed 1 week of the show, that would be it. The show would be canceled. I would come back and do another show like 3 years later. Because I am somebody who's really into process and really into doing things a certain way. And I know sometimes that's to my detriment. Like, why are we talking about April 23rd books? Why are we not talking about the books from last week? Well, I can't repair everything about my crazy brain. But the ability to actually be like, you know what? It's going to be fine. I wanted to do it last week. There was no time last week. Life has been crazy. Comic books have been crazy. Work has been crazy. The world has been crazy. I just did not have the wherewithal to do it. And my resolve, repair, recover this year is like, take the time you need to recover so you can come back and do the thing you resolved to do with the full attention and love and verve that you always had for it. And that is why I'm back today and not a week ago. Because if I did this a week ago, I would have been in a bad mood. And I'm here today to do it because I'm really, really enjoying it. So not to reuse an old moment of crisis, but I guess my point is like, are you actually doing the resolving and the repairing and then giving yourself the time to recover? And I've had to think about that a lot in a lot of different ways. I've had a bodily injury, not a grievous one, but one that's preventing me from doing all the exercise that I usually do that has overlapped this period of no comicking. And it absolutely relates to that because I'm miserable that I can't do all the exercise that I usually do because it helps with the good brain chemicals because I don't snort anything. I just have to make them in my head. And I was like, you know what? You can't just be like, I'm going to run a 10K tomorrow. We're back. No, because any repairs that you did, if you decide that you're going to go back and go hard, even if you think you recovered, that's just going to send you spiraling back into damage. And I tried that once earlier this year and was off my feet for a couple of weeks as a result. And so this time it was like, you know what? We're going to actually have time to recover. And then we're going to just introduce it little by little. Let's go on a walk. Let's go on a 2K walk. Let's go on a walk where I run for 30 seconds. And I know that this is like known, right? This is how couch to 5Ks work. Like, it's not like I invented a wheel here, but it was just such a like tangible physical reminder of like, there is a reason that you need the recovery time. You cannot just resolve and go back to things whole hog. Then you just burn out again, whether that's a physical burnout in your body, a financial burnout, a mental burnout, all of the burnout. And so that I've just been thinking about a lot because I'm here and I'm like actually pretty excited. And these are books that I read, a month ago. So do I remember everything about them? I don't know, but I'm very happy to be talking about them. And that is the difference between if I had come here last week or not. So that's my moment of crisis, just a vague non-comics moment of crisis, but that is just the thing that I have been thinking about. Johnny, by the way, does not mind either pronunciation of his name. Richard Fearing saying hello. Leslie Ann Sales saying hello. It's so kind of you all to drop by and say hi, especially since you had very little warning. Speaking of Bip Bam Pal's Krakoa retrospective, trying to get a big guest in the Fall of X finale episode. I hope can make that happen. Ooh, I wonder who it's going to be. Johnny gets good guess. Okay. I don't think we're going to do a lengthy Ask Me Anything because y'all have just been chatting with me as we go. And honestly, there's books to talk about, but you can't. So just as a reminder of what we do from here, I have 60 seconds to talk about every issue that was out on the 23rd of April, whether I read it or not, but I did read, I think maybe more than 50, definitely more than 40 of them. And I have it in 2 chunks. So I'll take a big break after the letter I. I'll take smaller breaks along the way to try to catch some of your comments as they are relevant. Because sometimes I'm catching up in your comments like 20 books later and nobody remembers what you were responding to, but I can't really do like questions about life, the universe, and everything. The answer is 42, but I can't do those questions in the middle of the comicking. So if anybody had any big questions for me now, we'll do 3 minutes of Ask Me Anything. Logan Wayne was saying there's a UK so-called EastEnders, which I am aware of, and back in the 90s, an Italian family joined, and one of the characters was named Johnny, but every character, even within his family, pronounced a different way, which honestly is very accurate to the experience of being an Italian. At least as an Italian-American, everybody in my family says my last name a different way. No two of them say the last name the same as each other. But they all say like Brajol the same way, right? Like all these made up Italian-American pronunciations of Italian words, especially food words, ricotta, which no actual Italian says that way, but Italian Americans say it that way. What are my bottom 5 Fantastic Four runs? Well, I've not read all of Fantastic Four the way I have read other things. And even in terms of paging through, I haven't paged through all of it because it's so obvious to get right for the reading order that I only have to like dive in deep if there's like a specific conflict or like does an arc end here. I don't really love that stuff between 150 and Perez in the late 180s. I don't know who wrote it, maybe Archie Goodwin. It just doesn't excite me. It doesn't spark joy. So that's definitely on the lower end of my runs. I don't particularly like Mark Miller. I didn't really like Matt Fraction's FF run. Future Foundation was fine, but his run on Fantastic Four was and I hate Dan Slott's run. So that 5, somebody who may or may not be Archie Goodwin, Miller, Slott, Fraction, and there's some crappy stuff after Claremont and LaRocca are off the book and before Wade starts. That's kind of just like, we're just keeping the lights on. I enjoy it still because I just like that era of comics, but I think that's fine. I think we got there. Oh gosh, if I'm going to read the comments, we're going to need glasses. See, in near mint condition, I don't have to read things, so I get to take my glasses off. Top Peter David comics. I mean, I'm mostly an X-Men reader. I've actually read comparatively little of his Spider-Man, so of course I'm going to say X-Factor. Like, that's the vast majority. I've never read all of his Incredible Hulk. I mean, honestly, I'm relatively underread on Peter David, if we're being honest. So I can't even give you a top. John Pauls, do I think DC has any logical thought processes we fans can follow in choosing to put on the 90s or 1000s run in either Finest or Compendium or Omnibus? Because the Compendiums are like pretty much the size of an Omnibus, right? No, you know what? I do think they are starting to form a strategy. I think they invented a lot of these formats and didn't really know the excitement they were going to inspire in the market. And now they're seeing that. And I think the strategies are changing in real time. Of course, Omar actually is now talking to DC. He is not talking out of school. He has not resolved. What am I trying? Revealed that on one of his AMAs. So I think DC is kind of aware that they've got a little bit of extra lightning in the bottle between the compacts, the compendiums. Like, I think they have the excitement of the market. There's a little bit of lack of trust in the market for reasons which we don't have to fully dig into here that they're trying to resolve. But I think they're in really good shape. I mean, I love their comic line right now. So I'm always rooting for DC and Marvel. I don't want either of them to suck, but it would be nice to see DC's comic line and their collections line both be really great at the same time. Hayden, who's my underdog pick to win All-Stars 10 underdog? Well, you have to think Rue's favorites are like Mistress, Georges, and Bosco. So and Lydia, but she's so new. I don't know if she would win. I would say like an underdog pick that still realistically could win would be Denali, or one of my personal favorites on the cast, Acid Betty, who in my mind, is perfection. Transformers or GoBots? As a kid, I actually preferred GoBots. I as we have established in Crisis lore, I had maybe one Transformer. I had never watched the cartoon. I remember in high school, my friends wanted to have like a cool, let's watch cartoons from our youth, like hangout. And I went thinking like, ooh, what are we going to watch? Like Bionic 6, which I loved. And they put on the Transformers movie. And I was like, what are these creatures? And they're like, you don't know Transformers? But I was just a G.I. Joe person and I didn't know Transformers. How does Fear State figure into DC? Is it an event? Fear State was just like a period, right? Because that's not like Nightmares. I don't know. DC events are so puzzling to me sometimes. No, Fear State was like a banner on Batman related books during the Tinian period. Johnny secretly loves Fraction and Robinson's runs. I like Fraction's run. I like the spirit of it, which is it's just like a family road trip through space. And I do think the Fantastic Four is a family book. And when it ignores the family aspect, that's at its detriment. I just think it was so clear he was more interested in writing FF than Fantastic Four. And that drags it down. Lance McNair's planning, I know 3 minutes are up. I'm just catching a few more. I'm planning on reading Hickman's F4 before the movie comes out. I've been preoccupied with Wheel of Time on book 8. Wow, and they're not quick to read, but I'll need a break after this one. Well, yeah, start from, Dark Reign, the beginning of the first omnibus, read all of his Fantastic Four, then reread all of his Avengers, and then read Secret Wars. You don't really need to read S.H.I.E.L.D. It doesn't really have S.H.I.E.L.D. has more to do with his Fantastic Four run than it has to do with the Avengers and Secret Wars stuff. So you could read S.H.I.E.L.D. first, and then you'll know some things for Fantastic Four, or you can read it after Fantastic Four because it kind of came out, over the course of like 10 years almost. Actually, more. No, I think. And his Secret Warriors doesn't really intersect with either of those too strongly. Okay, anime is in more of a compendium collecting mood so far. 5 fat books of 1,000 pages. Is it safe to put them on my shelf? I often think about that. I'm trying to find the closest one to be on my shelf. Hold on, I might have to disappear from camera for a second, which I can do on this show because I'm not tethered to the shelf or to the camera like I am. So I have the Lobo Compendium, which is a big, this is absurdly large. It's really, really big. So the thing with compendiums is you have to just think about, there's not a lot of support for the spine, right? There's no ribbon. There's no like glued strip on a hardcover book. And here's like an old one, like Astonishing X-Men. You know, there's like support for all of that, and not just the sewing and the gluing, but there's this whole kind of like backing of the cover itself. And that's why when we open a book like this, I'm trying not to like have any disasters or I break a book in the middle of the screen. You know, like there's multiple levels of support that you can see there for that spine. And so with a compendium, you just want to think about, it doesn't have that. Like it literally just has the cover paper giving it that level of support. So I find with big books like this, and probably my oldest one of this size is Nick Spencer's Morning Glories compendium, that they want to do this, right? They want to like slump. And then that also will make the page block slump. So I think for me, I do think stacking them like this is not a terrible idea. You don't want to put too much pressure on them or uneven pressure, because not only would you create an indent on the cover, but that also can hurt the spine by kind of like rolling it if you have something that's putting pressure unevenly across it. But also, if you're going to keep it upright, just keep it pretty square to other books, or maybe even put like a book weight or a bookend on one side of it, because the thing you want to really avoid is that lack of squareness of the spine. Not only because it'll start to deform, but also the glue strip it's petite. It's not a lot of glue. So if you start to get a lot of twist on the spine, the torque of the twist will start to pull the glued signatures away from the page block. And it's really easy to lose a cover off of one of these things. Not that I'm saying that they have particularly weak glue. I'm just saying because their weight is so much and the weight of the page block is so much that torque it's really easy to start to pull the cover board away from the pages. And once the pages start separating on a book of that size, you're just out of luck. So yeah, I would say just really be mindful of the spine and giving the spine good support and making sure that it's not getting torqued or twisted. And you know, I mean, there's books that were printed with far inferior technology that have lasted a long time because they've been taken care of well, and there's books that are printed really nicely that didn't last a long time because they're, I mean, look at my 4 Marvel book, which is really, you know, like this is a nice stone binding, but you know, I got this as a 10-year-old and I've read it a million times and it's totally separated from its cover. But you know, that page block is going strong. So, you know, books get wear and things happen to them and they're not going to be perfect forever. And that is just the ephemeral nature of life. Okay. I do, you know, locally and very perceptive. I try to only talk about Kid Krisis approved things on the stream, and sometimes people ask about like other family or friends, and like I actually am pretty clear with people that I'm only going to talk about them if they give me that story to talk about, because I feel like this is like you're welcome into a whole lot of my life, but they didn't say yes to that, and especially Kid Krisis can't really give that full consent because she's a kid. But she's unsurprisingly, she's a fast talker. Plus, Kiwis are actually pretty fast talkers too, and she doesn't really have the accent, but she's around Kiwis all day at school, and so she's around me, who I think I talk faster here on stream than I do in real life, actually. But so she's around, you know, me on the stream, and then she's around Kiwis or not on the stream, in the house. I don't live stream my whole life. I want to, but I don't. And then she's around Kiwis all day, so it's kind of irresistible. Between FF115 George Press is mostly Roy Thomas. Well, I guess I'm saying screw Roy Thomas. And your least favorite right now, 27 D'Angelo, is Marv Wolfman. Okay, we gotta start talking about comics. I've never read any Chuck Dixon Nightwing. Maybe I'm trying to decide now that I'm all okay. Here's the real drama. Getting back to that other question we had a minute ago from Anime, talking about compendiums, and Jarn Paul's, the hardest tongue twister that anybody shows up with is saying the R and then the W. Jarn Paul's. I've been thinking about, like, do I want to get all the compendiums to fill in between finest? Like, are they really the same line? If something gets a compendium, is it not likely to get a finest? So like they just did those 2 Nightwing compendiums. It would take like between 5 and 8 finest to cover all those. Should I just get the compendiums? But I think there is a Catwoman compendium, and we do have one of those Catwoman books here. So I don't know. Anyway, that's all I have to say about that. One more. Longtime fan via near mint condition. Hello to you, Devin. Just got to say, I finished the X-Men 101, and boy, to see that what Claremont was cooking is so early on is a shock to say the least. Yeah, 98 to 101. Is it 98? Whatever one where the Sentinels attack them while they're in the Rainbow Room at dinner. And then Jean is on the is like on the satellite in her black dress, and she's like, "You're just a Nazi by another name." That's one of my favorite, probably my first favorite scene in Claremont. Yeah, you'll find there is some dull stuff in the teens, the 20s, and the beginning of the 20s. And then even in the 40s and 50s, which starts to have really iconic stories, Claremont has not like mastered the voices yet. But hang in there, because it's one of the greatest runs of all time for a reason. Are you sure there's no Catwoman compendium? Am I making that up? I swear that they did a Valiant Catwoman compendium. I feel like I remember doing a link for it on Crushing Crisis. I mean, I trust you if there's not. As we've learned, I only know things when I write them down specifically outside of my brain. Well, that was 10 minutes that I said was going to be 3, but there you go. Okay. Let's talk about comics, shall we? Is DC doing the Milestone Compendium and the upcoming Finest? DC is doing the Milestone Compendium and the upcoming Static Finest with different mapping. Well, yeah, I mean, the Milestone Compendiums have a million billion comics in them. They're not going to do the Finest the same way. Maybe I'm missing. Maybe I'm missing some nuance there. Okay, speaking of missing nuance, let's talk about comics. So, we know that I no longer read 2000 AD. It was not sparking joy. It was supposed to be my reward, and it was starting to feel like a punishment. So, my first one of the week. I didn't not do the stream because of my opinions, but some of my opinions are going to seem like a reason I didn't do the stream a month ago. Okay. So I, of course, loved the first issue of Martian Manhunter. It brought me to tears. I read it and reread it. I wrote an amazing song about it, which you can hear me play on the show. So this was my pick of the week. I was so happy and excited to read a second issue, and I just hated it so gosh darn much. I did not like it. Here's the thing it's all coming back to me now, Celine. At the beginning of this week of comics, there were 5 books in a row at the beginning of the alphabet that all played with time in their narrative in terms of like slicing up the way we experience the narrative in time, or cutting back and forth between time, or going quickly and then slowing down, which this one does as this inner voice inside of the man, which is the Martian voice, real or imagined, we don't quite know yet. It's kind of interrupting him and talking in somewhat gibberish, kind of computer speak. I hate that. I hate that device. I hate cutting back and forth constantly between tones in a panel by panel way. I hate when speech is made gibberish constantly for a whole issue. My favorite way to do speech and dialect in a comic book is you give us like the first page where it's kind of in the wacky dialect, and then you kind of soften as you go because the readers get it. Yeah, I was in a rage. I hated this so much. It really, really soured me on the whole week of comics to start with this, which I thought was going to be my favorite book of the week. But it's a me thing. The quality still high. The art is amazing. The colors are amazing. Oh, I forgot. I didn't say who did it. See, it's been a while. Oh gosh, and now I need my glasses again. All this reading. So of course it's written by Dennis Camp. It's art by Javier Rodriguez, who is also doing his own colors, and letters by Hassan Othman Elha. And this is Absolute Martian Manhunter #2. See, I'm remembering how to do this now. Yeah, it just wasn't for me, and that's fine. And I think I'm still excited about reading this series, but I do worry with Dennis Camp that he gets a little bit too excited about playing with form, and we start to lose the storytelling, which we're going to hear me complain about again in just a few issues from here. So here we go. James Abel, though, loved it. Absolute Martian Manhunter #2. This issue continues to showcase the unique way art of a comic can be, and I agree. I did love the art. And here's more of it. I mean, the art is just, it's an art book, and I am willing, I have the ability to say, you know what, this is an art book. I'm not going to get too into the pacing of the dialogue because it's an art book. And this one, I think, because I love the dialogue and the way it was written in the first issue, it was hard for me to let that go entirely and just appreciate the art. But I mean, the art, this is Eisner winning. The colors, the cartooning, the paneling, it's just amazing. Okay, now we come to Absolute Wonder Woman. Let me just remind myself, I have the credits, and then I say the things, and then I go to the place. Okay, oh, but then the credits are too large now because I'm blind. All right. So this is Absolute Wonder Woman, issue #7, and this is written by Kelly Thompson with art from Mattia Diaz and letters from Becca Carey, who I love. So this was the second book in a row that was playing with time and the way time is portrayed in its narrative. In this one, they were intercutting between younger Diana having experiences with various gods as well as her adopted mother, Circe, and Diana in the present day fighting through Hades for a reason that becomes revealed. The reason I didn't really like this is because it's centered on the riddle of the Lady and the Tiger, and Circe was trying to make the point to a young Diana that like the decision to make is not the decision that she thinks it is. And it just felt like a lot of the interstitial young Diana pages were just a page that again and again said, do you know what the decision is yet? And then young Diana said, no. And then we cut to the modern day. And then we go back and she said, do you know what it is yet? And Diana said, no. And then it just, I can't with that. Okay. Just tell me a freaking story. So, but I will say what's really interesting here is Mathieu de Lewis rendered his art much less. Like, even though this has got tons of shadows and lighting on Circe and Diana's faces here, it's much less, there's like not that like shine layer that he often puts on top. And I think it's because he was avoiding that in the flashback, or maybe he was under pressure on deadline. I do not know. But I actually love that. Like, to me, it shows off how good his artwork just is as artwork, and that he doesn't need all the special lighting effects to like put this shiny gloss on. And a lot of people don't like that. They're like, it looks like AI. No, AI can't draw at the quality that he can draw. But I like that he went a little bit lighter weight on that. So now we come to another book that played with some fractured time and fractured narrative, which is Amazing Spider-Man #2. This is written by Joe Kelly with art from Pepe Larraz, colors from one of my lesser favorite colorists, Mark Gracia, and letters by Joe Caramagna. Beautiful cover by Larraz. Shame about the colors. So this again played with fractured narrative. At this point, I am tearing my hair out. Picture me, it's a Friday night, so I guess it's like April 25th, and I'm settling down with what I think is going to be a great letter A of comic books. And I'm like, why can't we just tell a story in order? But this one, I think, had the right idea, because Peter is like stuck in these hallucinations. Did he get drugged? Is he just tired? Is he burnt out? And so there's a very story motivated reason, and our confusion is the character's confusion, which granted Absolute Martian Manhunter also did. But I think because we know Peter so well, it was a little bit easy for me to hang with than it was in Martian Manhunter, where that character is new to us in the Absolute Universe. Plus, there's no gobbledygook dialogue here interrupting the cuts between time. I hate the way that Gracia colors Pepe Larraz. I think it's a plague on his pencils. Like, why is there this white dot on her face? The reason there would be a white dot there would be if the reflection was that much light glinting off of her brow bone at that angle that it was almost like blinding you in a lens flare way. People's faces don't work like that. I've got a lot of makeup on right now, and that's only happening here where I'm wearing highlighter. Nobody puts highlighter over their eyebrow. Marty Gracia is praised as if he's this amazing colorist who knows exactly what to do. He does not know what to do. He makes people's faces look dumb. I'm so tired of it. He ruins so many comics for me. I'm really trying, and you know what? It's just like Hayden Sherman. He just needs to take one thing off. If we just took that shine layer off of this page, I would love it, because I love the way he colors flesh tones otherwise. But like, no one is that shiny. That's not a thing. I'm wearing highlighter and I'm not that shiny. But then you get a page like this where there's no faces to be shiny, where we're just playing with edge light, where we're playing with motivated light from this cathedral. Do I think Spider-Man's ass should be that highlighted? I don't know, because is the light from below that strong, or is that just like an artistic conceit to give us an edge light of him to really highlight his silhouette? I have a lot of opinions about colors, but I do like this run. Like, it feels like we're back to a Peter Parker who's like not just a moron, not just forgetful, but there's like reasons these things happen to him. And it's like, and he's a good person, and he's trying to work hard, and he can be successful at some things. And there's something for him to solve. It felt like for the past 5 years of Spider-Man, there's nothing for him to solve. He just experiences his life crashing over him, which is satisfying to a degree. But I like to have a Spider-Man that quips and thwips and also has agency. And even though he's stuck behind the 8 ball here in terms of his hallucinations, in terms of getting pulled into this plot that he's pulled into, I do feel like he has agency. And so I'm actually pretty excited by this run. I know you all have read more of it than me, because you're a month ahead of me, and there's been like 2 or 3 more issues since then. But I'm positive on it. Again, another page where I'm fine with the colors, except why is there this shine on his head? His costume isn't that shiny. What would make his head glow like that? But when we're not but this kind of low light little shiny thing is fine. I could go through every Marta Gracia issue that's ever been and point out all the things that make me that angry. There are people who are shiny. It's called face oil, right? Yes, I know, but not that shiny. Not every character on every page, Kane. Okay. Wait, super job. Oh, but I do light up the room. Wait, you need the shot and the chaser. People aren't shiny. Krisis. And then super job, but you do light up the room. Love it. What my self-esteem is raising as we speak. I do not read the Armory Wars. Is it from a band? Is it Coheed and Cambria, or is it a video game? I always forget. Okay. Yes, but we're choosing examples here of people that are specifically shiny. Yes, bald heads are shiny, but somebody's brow right here. Look, even if I bring the ring light onto the camera and I take off my glasses and I put it right in front of me, I don't shine there. It makes me angry. Okay, now everything's upset, including me. Okay, here we go. What's next? Oh, Arcana Royale. This was so cool. This is why I will just take a chance on a indie book. And this was Cullen Bunn. It was. So I wasn't taking like a full chance, because I know I like Cullen Bunn's horror. Art by A.C. Zamudio, colors by Bill Crabtree, letters by Joshua Reed. This is issue 1 of 4. The cover, I don't know if this really sold what was going on in the inside, although there was poker. I loved this art. It was kind of like rough edged in a way that almost made the lines look like a little aliased on screen, like they were like drawn much larger than this and shrunk down, which might have been the case. I would love to see this in print, but it's the story of this kind of Ocean's 11-y plot where this woman who's really good at card games and casinos and like kind of beating the house gets drawn into this supernatural world to beat the house at something supernatural. And so she gets this kind of MacGuffin of a suitcase, and some people want to kick the crap out of her. Some people are on her side. There's clearly a lot of mystery about what's going to happen. And I loved how Zamudio played with layouts like this one. What a cool layout of, she's playing herself at this table. She's practicing. So each of these little, they're not quite hexagons or septagons, but each of these little geometric shapes around the page are her playing each of the hands around the table. And then she kind of looks down and she sees the suitcase at her feet and it's opening. Love that. Love art that plays with angles and panels like that. I really, really enjoy this. Cool Angel, though, says, I play like none of this matters. Really like this one. Oh, see, I thought that was going to go in a different direction. Hudson has some bluster and skills. We got a rude awakening at the end. Looking forward to more about her and the game. Cool Angel. So perfectly said. I do not read Archaic from Ahoy. I believe this was the last issue. Okay. Just let me remind you that part of why I'm so endearing is I have opinions that not other people don't have as much as I do. So just remember that while I talk about this book. This is Assorted Crisis Events. We might be in a copyright dispute. It's by Denny's Camp, Eric Zawadsky, Jordi Belair, and Hassan Otsman El Hal. This is, I think, now my least favorite comic book issue of 2025. I didn't understand why we had to read it or who would have spent the time to make it. And so many people praised it so much. And I think this says something really essential to me about comics making and my reaction to comics making. I never want to be made to feel a certain way because a comic disoriented me. I think if you're going to disorient me, do it via plot. Like, I find Nice House on the Lake disorienting because we don't understand everything that's happened and it's being revealed to us. But when a comic is made disorienting just by the way the scenes are out of order or the dialogue is overlaid with dialogue that doesn't make sense, that might make sense later, my brain turns off. And it's not because it's too hard for my poor little hamster on the wheel of my brain. It's because I don't find that interesting. I'm like, anybody can pretend like their script is artful by shaking it up in a weird order, but tell me a story that really moves me, that is hard to do. Now, some people were really moved by the story. I saw a lot of people say the whole idea of the juxtaposition of birth and death, and the birth of a human being and the birth of an animal that's meant ultimately for food, but are humans kind of just disposable too, is very interesting. I agree. All of that is very interesting. I couldn't find purchase in this comic book because I had no character to care about. And there was no narrative to hook onto. And even having read the whole thing and understanding the order in which it was actually unfolding chronologically, I had no reason to go back and reread it because it pissed me off so much. I'm dropping this book. It's clearly not for me. And I don't ever want to make it out like this is an objectively bad comic book just because I hate it with the heat of 1,000 suns. It's clearly not objectively bad. 99% of people, if you go into Comic Book Roundup or League of Comic Geeks or whatever, liked it. For me, personally, and my personal tastes, this is the nadir of stupid, pointless bullshit in indie comic books. I could not have hated it more. And so we're going to drop this because I don't need to belabor that point every single week. I know this is the panel from Astonishing Spider-Man. Here's the cover. Okay. Oh. Some people had some things to say about that. Always an Instigator said Dennis Camp in this book doesn't even know Dennis Camp from Ultimates. Okay, so I'm not alone. I am not alone. Okay, James Abel enjoyed that issue. We don't always have to agree. We'll work it out in counseling later. So this, here's another book that I wish I could drop, but I have a commitment to reading all of Marvel Comics, although I did drop Incredible Hulk, so it is possible. But this is free in Marvel Unlimited, and it takes a minute and a half to read. But this book is so bad. It's so bad. So Peter Parker can't be Spider-Man right now because he's like it's some person split him from the spiders in his body, and the spiders went away with his powers. It's written by Scott Aukerman. I'm sorry, Scott. I hate you. It's art by Julian Shaw, who draws everybody's face as if they are just a gorilla with giant top teeth in this issue. It's really disturbing. Colored by Ceci de la Cruz, who still does not know how to color the Spider-Man costume. Lettered by Joe Sabino. You're just being harmed by the reputation of your associates right now, Joe Sabino. Basically, Spider-Man has no powers, and so he's like, okay, well, screw being a superhero. I'm just going to live my life. And I get it that this being the superhero and being interrupted from everything is a huge component of the Parker luck that makes him as harried as he is. And so I understand the idea that like he would be somewhat happy to be relieved of that, but it just doesn't track for me that he would be so relieved to not be a superhero that he would just fully just give it all up as a result. And so it just didn't work for me, and the art was ugly. Okay. I also just fixed a microphone thing, so if I got really quiet and then really loud, that's why. Okay. One World Under Doom, The Avengers, which is kind of confusing because the Avengers title and logo is like right in the middle of the cover, which no one ever really does. This is written by Jed MacKay. Sadly, Fareed Karami is taking a break, although I did see him post some art on social media, so he will be back. But this is Valerio Schiti, colored still by Federico Blee, who we have a peace treaty with at the moment, and letters by Corey Petit. So I went into this being like, it's going to be a bunch of Masters of Evil nonsense. I don't really care for them. I think Avengers villains are kind of terrible by definition. And also, I wasn't really excited to go back to Valerio Schiti, who's amazing, but I just love Fareed Karami so much. Nope, guess what? I was wrong. This was incredible. Here's why it was incredible. Because Jed MacKay leans into how stupid and pointless these villains are, but like they still have a plan that is taking advantage of the fact that the Avengers are split across multiple attentions right now, which to me is different than what Ryan North is doing in One World Under Doom, which we'll get there, but his villains suddenly we have to believe they're competent. Jed MacKay doesn't make us believe these villains are competent. Then it also really plays with, I didn't do any more pages. It also really plays with this idea that Sam Wilson kind of feels underpowered in this lineup. Like Carol had to do some convincing to get him on this Avengers team to begin with. And he's kind of like, I get taken out of fights so easily. Like my bones are so easily broken. I'm not super strong. I always feel like I'm behind with you guys. And so he gets left on the Impossible City while the rest of the Avengers continue their assault on Doom and trying to deal with the events that have been happening in One World Under Doom. And that means both Sam and the Impossible City itself personified have to deal with the Masters of Evil who make their way onto the base. It was just great. It was fun. It was tense. It made good use of a lot of these 2-bit player villains. It made great use of Sam Wilson. I was hugely in favor of it, clearly, because it rose in my top 12. And also, Federico Blee, good job. Now, he still does a little bit of blue in his highlight, but even if you look at the highlighted colors on... who is this? Slapstick? I forget who this... some crazy person that used to hang out with Deadpool. If not Slapstick, what is his damn name? I can't remember his name. But anyway, Madcap. But if you look at the bottom, even though these shadows are a little bit blue in the grays on his shoulder, that's just because that's the color that pink would be if it was cool. But like the other blues, like on his face, or the other highlights on his head and on his wrist are not as blue. And that's all I'm looking for from Federico Blee. Just don't go blue every single time. Okay. Avengers Academy was my favorite Marvel book of the week, because I love this book when it is firing on all cylinders, and it was. Here, it's written by Anthony Oliveira, who I like so much. I'd love to interview him on the channel if I had enough time to do interviews. We're really trying to go in that direction. Art by Bailey Rosalind, who just gets better and better with every issue. Colors from KJ Diaz. Letters from Ariana Maher. This is why this issue worked so well for me. It focused all the Avengers kids have been thrown throughout the time stream, which I've been kind of complaining about a lot throughout this recent arc, because I like them when they're together. That's why I read this book. But this follows Blackheart, who has been personified into a very F-boy kind of human being, as he gets tossed backwards through time, and he gets inserted in this historical period that will have an effect on the Darkhold as we know it in the modern day. Anthony Oliveira is astounding at writing these kind of like period piece type things. And the thing that really worked for me about this one is he made us feel for a character. Like, he introduced a character, he gave her a life, he made us annoyed about the injustice in her village and the kind of the things that she's experiencing. And then he resolved that story all in one like 38 scroll digital comic book, and he did something meaningful with continuity without just feeling like, oh, what a dumb retcon, everybody wants to make a retcon. No, it gave us like a nice hidden moment of continuity that we'd never seen before, and that was really fun. I loved it. I thought the art was great, the story was great, it was compelling, I was really hooked. It was all the things that I love, and which I think Marvel can be doing on the digital platform when it's got creators who are really using it to try to tell stories that will actually make you feel something, rather than just some kind of like random trash that unlimited subscribers get for free. Next, we come to the second chapter of Batman Too Hush, Too Quiet. It's written by Jeff Loeb, art by Jim Lee, with inks by Scott Williams, and colors, which I do not like, from Alex Sinclair, and then Richard Starking's Comic Craft letters. By the way, I complained last time that these letterboxes have this like weird stripy watery texture in the back of them, and that it was really annoying. I actually got to talk to somebody who works with Richard Starkings about that, and apparently in the print file and in the printed comic books they don't look like that, and it's something to do with how Comixology is converting the file. So now I know not to complain about it. Nobody made a bad decision. It's the color build of the gradient from blue to that yellowy color in those boxes. I'll say this. I like this a lot better than the first issue of this nonsense. And the reason I liked it partially is because Jim Lee was trying some things. I think people think of Jim Lee as this specific gestalt, this certain style, this hyper muscular Neil Adams derived style, but Jim Lee is capable of a lot. If you go back and look at his death blow at the beginning of Wildstorm, he was drawing a lot more like Tim Sale deliberately in that book, and that's why Tim Sale eventually drew that book. But he also can do this kind of like painterly, sketchy stuff, which also kind of reminds me of Dustin Nguyen. In this issue, he did a lot of that for the different scenes and the different tones, and it really drew me in and made me excited. I still think Alex Sinclair is just coloring for the wrong decade. I feel like that on Iron Man. I feel like that here on Batman. His colors just look washed out. Like, and it's not to say that I want everything to be super saturated. I just think the way he's doing colors and flesh tones, this very kind of like grayish greenish cast, that was very late 2000s colors. Like, get with the modern day, my friend. But I like this issue, you know, it re-legislated a bunch of Jason Todd, Joker, Batman, love triangle stuff, bizarre love triangle, that we've seen legislated before. So for big Jason Todd fans, I think you're probably going to be annoyed, because it's going to feel like, oh my gosh, we have done this before. Why are we going back to this well? But I think it was true to his character insofar as something that's this repetitive about something that's been this resolved so many times could be. So I mildly enjoyed this. I still think it's just there to sell comic books, which all comic books are, but it just doesn't feel particularly significant or memorable to me in the way that the original Hush does, which was also just there to sell comic books. But I had fun with that. I'm not having fun here yet. James Abel says, I'll give this another issue to get better. This wasn't the best. Cruel Angel says, aw, Bats really cares. Lego Joker would be so happy. Too bad. Jason disagrees. Cruel Angel, you're on fire today. And Jarl says, I like late 2000s coloring though. Yeah, I love DC's house coloring style so much, the way that it's executed by Adriano Lucas, by Tomeo Morey, by Jordi Belair. I just love the current slate of colors so much that to like pick this throwbacky, literally 20 years ago colorist just because he was part of the original team, I feel like is like holding Jim Lee's artwork back somehow. But that's just me. It's just me. Everything I say in here is just me. So I liked this page, right? This is interesting. When he plays in dark, in shadow, and then does those kind of like pinker oranger tones, that's just the highlight of the gun flash. What's that called? The gun muzzle flash, muzzle flare. That page really, really worked for me. And I love unusual colors in a comic book. So I love this all being all in reds. That was a cool choice. I love this ground being so pink. The ground isn't really that pink. That's a stylistic choice. That's why I read comic books. I want to read that kind of colors that has an edge of the fantastic in it. I don't read Black Hammer because it's by Jeff Lemire, and I love myself a little bit too much for that. No, I know other people like it. I just do not vibe with Lemire. I just have to get a couple comments there. James the Medium Answer saying, I'll say then I'm sick of Jason's development always getting taken away. I agree. He comes 2 steps forwards and then just to be reset, 2 steps forward, 2 steps back. We come together because you beat me to death with a crowbar. We need Tynion to do some Red Hood. I don't know if we're ever going to get Tynion back to do some Red Hood stuff, but I agree. It's just one of those things where it's so central to his character that he's like, he uses the guns and he's got a streak in his hair and he's the bad boy and Joker stuff. That it's like every time he gets pulled into mass market appeal Batman stuff, we always like revert back to all of that because that's who he's got to be for the mass market appeal Batman stuff. And then only when he's on his own, he gets development. I think a lot of X-Men characters are like that too, that like when we get them in isolation, they grow and then you get them back in a team book and it's like, nope, that's the same person we've been reading about for 30 years. And I think that's just the nature of comic books to a way, like when the character is at the biggest version of their platform, whether that's Uncanny X-Men or Batman, frequently they get reduced to the most essential elements of their character. But it's a bummer for somebody like Jason Todd, who we have seen so much cool development for over the years. Next, imagine not saying not just a cash grab, but a pitifully mediocre cash grab, telling us how he really feels as he always does. Always an instigator saying Sinclair's ballot is like melatonin for the eyes. You can't get melatonin here without a prescription. Logan Wayne, you know, artists sometimes just get randomly paired with a colorist. And, you know, back in the day, a lot of times artists would actually give specific Pantone color choices or spot color choices, spot build color choices for how they wanted things to be colored. Now, I don't know if pencilers do as much of a color guide. It depends on how they work and to what extent they're comfortable with color stuff. But clearly, Jim Lee has been working with Alex Sinclair for 2 decades, and that's why Alex Sinclair is here. Okay. Black Hammer, I mentioned. Blade Forger, you can look back. I did not like the first issue. Cool story, and seeing this murder red panda on the cover made me really excited. And then I remembered I just did not like the first issue, so I did not read it. Bug Wars. So I was kind of softer on this second issue of the series. This is the 3rd one by Jason Aaron, Mahmoud Azrar, Matthew Wilson, and Becca Carey, my favorite letterer, I think, at this point. And because it didn't have as much of the lore. The thing I loved about the first issue is it built this whole lore of the backyard bugs and all of their little anthropomorphized people that were their attendants, and it built the lore of this family and how those 2 pieces of lore crossed over. And then the second issue just felt like a very standard John Carter of Mars, Stranger in a Strange Land sort of riff. This issue got back to the lore, and I'm happy it did because this is only solicited at 5 issues, so there's not a ton of time to make this stuff happen. So we very quickly get some lore that this kid has special powers here in this bug world. We get the idea that the bugs can't kill him even if they want to. We get the idea that his father was precious to some bugs, but the enemy of some others. And we also get the idea that he is hotly pursued for different reasons by different factors. That all kept me super hooked. And also it just felt there's that edge of teenage attitude, but also a little edge of hopefulness that I like when Aaron does. I don't think this teenager, even with his father having died, even with him being stuck in this weird bug world, he would not be 100% pessimistic. Like, that just doesn't read to me, and he's not. And I like the way that Aaron is writing that. There was some great art in this. I do think Azrar's faces have a thing that they frequently do. You can see it on the woman's face in the corner, where he always draws one little line across the chin, which is real. That's like how the curve of a chin works. But sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh, I just want to see a face without a line there. He doesn't do it in the kid though. And then this guy has facial hair. So Azrar actually draws really, really good facial hair. And so it didn't bother me as much in this issue as it usually does. Okay. I saw this cover, and first of all, I was very confused about everything on it. But then I was like, how have I not heard about this? It looks, at first he kind of looks like he's in a Spider-Man costume, but then it's like actually a big ruffed collar. And then I was like, what is that? Is it a giant nipple? And then it looks like it's a mask with a horn broken off. It turns out this is a manga series that Silver Sprocket is releasing only like one issue per year. It's called The Changeling by Tina and Lugo. So I wasn't going to just hunt down this third one, and Silver Sprocket often does not do digital versions. So I maybe might not have even existed for me to buy on Comixology or read on Global Comics, but it did look cool and it piqued my interest a little bit. Going back just to Bug Wars for a second, always an instigator saying, really here for Jason Aaron's Hope era. As we all know, I am too. He's got 2 books in my top 10, which if you told Krisis of 10 years ago that was going to happen, Krisis would be like, you're from an alternate future timeline. I bet somebody like Trump is president there. Okay, let's continue. This cyberpunk, the colors on this just look so freaking cool. It's got a letterer I like. I like Dan Waters. I just don't need to read a comic book about a video game that I don't play. And I read somebody on one of the Discords, maybe near Mint Condition, saying that actually, if you don't play the game, it's pretty confusing. So I'm glad that I haven't taken the chance. But man, these covers, if this was just a comic about a that was its own property, I would have bought it by now, because the colors and the team are really, really selling me. Oh, now I have 2 that are out of order, very out of order. All right, here's the cover to Deadpool Wolverine number 4. This is written by good old Benjamin Percy, with art by Joshua Cassara and colors from Guru EFX and letters by Joe Sabino. Look, let's just get right with God here. This is an art book. It's an art book. And guess what? Benjamin Percy knows that. He worked with Joshua Cassara for like more than 30 issues, I think, of X-Force during Krakoa. He knows what this man is capable of. And Guru EFX, I have to say, I often associate them with a somewhat more anonymous color look, because I like somebody like Dean White coloring Joshua Cassara. No, the colors in this are magnificent. I love the amount of saturation on them. I love the use of lighting. I like the use of like contrasty colors here, like the blue of the zombie's mouth and eyes glowing against the more red of this door, and how he pushed the wood to be really red. I love this from an art perspective. There's very little plot. I mean, Deadpool and Wolverine fight some zombies, and then they fight some zombies some more, and then they fight some zombies some more. But the art is just so phenomenal that I think I might forgive it. Now, there's this hint that Joshua Cassara gives that this version of Strife, that's the bad guy here, it has been around for a long time. Like, he's been on ice and S.H.I.E.L.D. has been aware of it, which makes you then start to question, where is this in Strife's timeline? But the thing is, Strife's timeline is very fractured. We sometimes meet different Strifes, because depending on where he's killed or where he branches off, it's not always the same. It's not like Kang, where we're seeing like one continuous Strife. So actually, Cassara kind of got me a little intrigued here of like, ooh, is this a Strife we know already? Is this before or after some event we already are aware of in Strifes? Or is this some different branch of Strife? Like, it actually, even though I don't always love time BS, got me a little bit hooked. Look at Wayne saying, I sounded so weary sending Benjamin Percy's name. And that is true, I was. There's this new thing where the live comments will just pop up as they happen. And I am a little concerned about that, because, I mean, you all are very polite, kind people, but I don't know what crazy stuff you're going to say in the middle of me talking about these issues. Maybe we'll experiment with that a little bit later. Okay. I wanted to read, look, everything Black Box Comics does, I'm ready to check out at this point, because Catabasis was so good. And this cover is so cool. This has been slow to come out. It's Devil's Dominion number 10. I think it must have started out as like a Kickstarter comic or something, which, you know what, go on with your bad self. I couldn't do a comic book a year. So if you're doing a comic book a year, and this actually is like 3 or 4 issues a year, more power to you. I think I looked it up in Global Comics and it wasn't there. Now I'm doubting myself. I'm going to look, we're going to have a live fact checked. Just the thing that the networks will not do. We are going to live fact check whether I actually looked it up on Global Comics or not. Oh no, I think I didn't look it up, because here it is. Do you ever notice on Global Comics that it always, when you search, it sends you to the issue instead of sending you to like the comic book? I always want to go to the volume and it takes me to the issue. Anyway, guess what? This issue is on Global Comics, so I'm just an asshole. So I'm going to read this for next week, and I will update you about it next week, because they've got every issue on there, and I should have checked. I think I'm thinking of a different Black Box book that I looked for that we'll talk about in a little bit. But this looks cool to me, so I will read it for next week and we'll hear what I think. Okay, Dust to Dust was in my top 12, still in my top 20. I love this book. I love this book, co-written by J.G. Jones and Phil Bram. J.G. Jones doing his own art and coloring with letters from Jackie Marzan. This has a little bit of the turn, which makes sense because of plot. I mean, because we're in the 5th of 9 issues, and Giant Generator does these like odd numbered miniseries of like 9 issues. I love it. It's perfect amount of time to get really invested and feels like there's enough material. So in this town, the sheriff thinks he's identified who has killed this erstwhile family that was trying to move to California to leave the Dust Bowl, but he gets the crap kicked out of him. And we really learned over the course of the last 2 issues that this town has reasons not to trust this sheriff. It's not just like everybody in the town is mean. He's done some bad stuff and there's reasons not to trust him. So it really read for me that these ranchers would kick the crap out of him, whether or not they're guilty, which made it more interesting to me. But then things get really scary and gory, and we see sort of a secret character who has been at the margins of this kind of come to the fore in the plot. Some really great striking moments of artwork and color. I will say that when action gets really specific, like with specific motions of hitting or dragging or tight on hands, J.G. Jones does lose me a little bit. There were 2 points in this that I couldn't tell if somebody was being beaten or like assisted, which was confusing. But I really like how the plot threads are starting to tie up here. We've got the photographer who's here from the East Coast who's saying that she wants to pitch a whole story about this town and then send it on the wire back to her paper. But at the same time, she's shooting an engagement shoot for the mayor's daughter, but she's really using that to like investigate more of the background of the town. Just the whole mystery of everything is really coming together to me. And I'm just loving everything about it. Yeah, super job. I mean, imagine that, saying this will go 9 issues. That's how long it's going to take, and that's how it's going to come out. And then we all know to stick around and appreciate the 9 issues. Imagine if Marvel just started saying, this is a 10-issue series. Maybe we'll extend it, but as far as we know, it's 10. I think that would actually be healthier. And don't even get me, that was going to be the Moment of Krisis. That Marvel, I think they had a week, I think it's next week, so maybe it'll be next week's Moment of Krisis, where they had like 20 books out, and only 3 of them were for ongoing or non-canceled series that were not in the Ultimate Universe, which is, Marvel's in rough shape right now. Okay. Also, Lance pointing out that the woman who's the photographer really looks like Cate Blanchett, who I love. She does. Yeah. And there's another book we're going to get to. Oh, it's later. Solomon Kane, where the image of one of the faces is like so specific to a particular actor for me. Now we come to Eddie Brock Carnage. You know, I read most of these books on the 25th and 26th of April, and then I just read like 5 or 6 of them I didn't get to this weekend to get ready for this. And I was afraid that I was going to forget a lot of the things that happen in this issue. But when I got to this issue, Eddie Brock Carnage #3 by Charles Soule with art by Jesus Saez, colors from Matt Hollingsworth, and letters from Joe Sabino, I didn't have to open it up again because I remembered exactly why I loved this comic book. Charles Soule, I truly think he's the best in the industry right now for just making villains crazy, but also relatable. We have Carnage fighting Bushwhacker, and Soule plays this beat, which I don't know enough 80s and 90s Bushwhacker from Punisher to remember if this is real or not, where Bushwhacker just eats ammunition and then he gets bigger and turns into the gun. But the comedy / body horror with which that Jesus Saez digs into that to make this work just worked so well for me. And then we go into Carnage's brain, and possibly my favorite page of the entire week, and we have the Carnage symbiote like arguing with Eddie and Eddie's brain and personality, and we get this idea that Eddie's like trying to prevent himself from being controlled by Carnage, so he locks up his whole brain in chains and padlocks to be like, don't mess with me. And so we get this idea of Carnage making these giant blades, which if you look closely are each half of a jawbone, which is so weird and creepy, and he's basically trying to cut into Eddie's head, inside of his head. And I didn't get the next page, but you can see here the start of an arm forming in Eddie's head, so Eddie's head starts punching. But I mean, I love when writers and artists really push the astral plane and the psychic plane and the interiority of a comic book character as crazy and wild as it gets. Like, not just having characters walk around in inky blackness in a very Stranger Things kind of way, but really pushing the absurdity of that. And this to me was that. I love everything about this comic. I love the colors. I love the art. I love the violent nature of it. I love the mystery. I love the conflict between Eddie Brock and Carnage. It's just everything you could want from Carnage as a villain in a comic that has Eddie Brock as sort of kind of the good guy. Charles Soule is perfectly towing that line, charm balls when you're goofy and eat bullets. Yeah, that's just, you know, that's a mood we get in sometimes. Sometimes I feel like that's my eating habits. Just pull out, just leave a bullet and just eat, choke them down. That's sometimes what it feels like, which is not healthy. Okay, I don't read epitaphs from the abyss because I just don't get excited about horror anthology comics. I am reading Flash. This starts a new arc, but it's not really a new arc because it's just more of the same from Simon Spurrier and Vasco Georgiev and Matt Herms and Hassan Otsman Elhal. It plays with this idea that Flash, who here is Wally West, has learned how to split himself up infinitely, and so he's just on the moon or something, waging a war against infinite eclipses. I'm sorry, I'm falling asleep talking about it because it's so fucking stupid. This is not what we want. Is it what you want from a Flash comic book? Maybe. I'm not a noted Flash fan, but if I were to make like a stack rank of things I want from a Flash comic book, higher would be like running. Higher would be like family. Higher would be like science. Lower would be time stream nonsense. Lower would be there's every single thing in the world has a force to interact with the Speed Force. And then at the bottom, it would be millions of Flashes fighting against hundreds of eclipses. There is a cool aspect to this, and I enjoy that Cy Spurrier is building a little bit of like a why this is happening, what is the MacGuffin here. But it's and I like that he, you know, this is a very Jamie Madrox multiple man beat where we're being made to care for clones that we know are destined to die, and that is fun to a degree, but it's just not for me. Flash Gordon Quarterly. So this is interesting. So I'm loving the Flash Gordon ongoing, but then in addition to the Flash Gordon ongoing, there's also Flash Gordon with the Defenders of the Earth, which is in a completely separate continuity with all the Defenders of the Earth being older, not happening in the same universe as the main Flash Gordon. And then there's also like historical Flash Gordon, and I don't know how much of the historical Flash Gordon is in continuity to the current series. What this Flash Gordon Quarterly, gosh, that's hard to say, Flash Gordon Quarterly is doing that's interesting is it's telling stories across all three of those. So the first story, which is written by Michael Morchi with art by Lee Ferguson, which was really good, and letters from Charles Pritchett, tells a story that I think is happening in the current day of the current Flash Gordon ongoing. It could have been a little bit clearer about that. The story ultimately felt disposable to me only because I couldn't tell if I was supposed to be reading this as if Flash Gordon had just left this planet, which he did in the ongoing. And so if it was just a random story from this universe, I kind of felt it was lacking. But if it actually, because it talks about Ming being in charge of the universe right now, which he's very much not in the current run of Flash Gordon, so that confused me. So as a standalone story that doesn't relate to anything, I think it was boring. If it did relate to the current run, I think it was interesting nuance about a character we'd met, but I just couldn't tell, and that was annoying to me. The middle story was in the Defenders of the Earth continuity, really cool art from Alex Sanchez, colors by Dan Brown, and letters by Buddy Bowden, but I don't like the Defenders of the Earth comic book by Dan DiDio, so I just kind of paged through and looked at the art. Amazing art. And then the last story I really liked, script by Mark Andreyko, art from Igor Lima, colors from Mark Engelert, and letters by Taylor Esposito. And this is like a flashback to how Flash Gordon became Flash Gordon. Again, I have no idea what the continuity of it is. Is this real? Is this an alternate universe? Take on it, whatever. But I don't really know a ton about this character and how he went from just a regular guy in a regular modern day Earth to this like pulp space hero. So there's something very compelling about seeing his origin story serialized here. And I really liked it. I guess I'm going to buy the next quarterly issue, 3 months. I mean, heaven only knows what life will be like 3 months from now. But I guess I'll buy the next issue because I'm kind of hooked on this backup story with his origins, but I need the A story to be more explicit about if it's in continuity, not just because I'm a continuity nerd, but because I didn't know what to assume. Like the universe is in such a specific state in the main Flash Gordon book that I just didn't know how to read it. And that was annoying to me. As somebody who is dutifully following multiple books in this line, I feel like do me some favors. Welcome to the Twilight. I love the first issue of this so much, which was by Matt Fraction and I think the Allreds. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to love this. Now I come to find out that it's an anthology book with a different big name creator doing each issue. And this one, unfortunately for me, is by Brian Michael Bendis. Now, I do enjoy Bendis sometimes. But a standard one-shot issue of a Bendis comic book, I already know what's going to happen. It's going to be a lot of random talking and very little plot, and then I'm supposed to feel satisfied, but it's totally empty calories. So this is plotting by Bendis along with the creators of this world, Patton Oswalt and Jordan Bloom, art by Sue Lee, letters by Nate Picos of Blambot. I have very little to say about it. It was, so this young woman is a sort of a vigilante, and she sort of has some things to avenge, and she sort of is trying to get back with a friend of hers, and I just didn't care. Okay, let's move on. I'm trying to only get comments when they are relevant to the books, and then I'll get like the other comments when we take our break at the eyes. Are we asking about Mark Andreyko, who wrote this? Are we at a collective place yet where we've forgiven Mark Andreyko for Batwoman? Well, you know, Mark Andreyko has written a lot of good stories, and he's actually a pretty reliable plotter and scripter. And he was handed a raw deal with that Batwoman because Hayden Blackman and J.H. Williams walked off the book for reasons that I forgive them for, but I also think were blown out of proportion. They're like, they won't let us let Batwoman get married. DC's evil. Well, no, Batwoman, see, this is why I'm supposed to not talk about these things during comic books, but you got me on a tangent. Batwoman had only been around as a character for what, 4 years at that point? She was a brand new property that DC hadn't even totally exploited the rights of her IP yet. No, they weren't going to let her get married. It had nothing to do with a gay wedding. It had to do with, you don't let a character get married that has only had like 5 or 6 arcs to her name so far. That's absurd. You're still at a point with that character that you want to be playing with different status quos. You don't want to lock her into that. That's not how big 2 comics work. So I always thought that their walk off the book was very juvenile, actually. And I get that they were, it was not just because DC wouldn't let them let her get married. It was because they had initially agreed to that plot and agreed to let them have certain villains in their plot, which I think Killer Croc was one of them. And then they pulled the rug out from the plot and also used those villains elsewhere that they thought they were exclusively using. And I get how frustrating that must be. And I'm sure, and I respect these 2 creators hugely. My point is that I think Andreyko had to come in out of nowhere to come up with something to do with the rest of that book. And so he leaned into the horror adjacent vibe of Batwoman, which unfortunately now has just kind of become her brand. At the time, I don't think it had to be her brand. I think that run made it her brand. There are some enjoyable moments in that, but it is mostly a disaster. But yes, I have fully forgiven him, to answer your question. Okay. I don't read Gotcha Man, so I didn't read Gotcha Man Ryu Scavengers. But that bad guy is legit. He's boss, in the words of Jess. G.I. Joe. No, not Real American Hero, just current continuity Energon universe G.I. Joe. Number 6, written by Joshua Williamson, art by Tom Riley, colors by Jordi Belair, and letters by Russ Wooten. This was both satisfying and unsatisfying, which is a deeply Joshua Williamson feeling, because it had this incredible fight between Duke and Cobra Commander. Tom Riley drew the hell out of it. It was easy to follow. And I like Cobra Commander's a crazy person, and he isn't always a totally reliable bad guy, but he's got to be a little bit scary. He's actually really similar to Mr. Sinister in that way, that the comedy of him is absolutely part of his character. But if you forget that he's threatening and you just make him out to be this silly goofball whose plans never work, you lose the drama of anybody fighting him. And Joshua Williamson, to his credit, I think really understands that. And there are points here where he comes off a little bit silly, and there's points here where he comes off totally sadistic and psychopathic, which I think is perfect for Cobra Commander. Ultimately, it did feel a little bit empty calorie, and the scenes in it, other than this fight, felt kind of like very, for the end of the first arc, I just felt like there could have been more. But that's just Joshua Williamson's writing, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. I think it's mildly working for me here, and I remain really engaged with this new G.I. Joe universe. James Abel saying, great action movement within the art. I agree. Felt like I was reading a Captain America versus the Red Skull. Great comparison. Yeah, I would totally agree with that. But then we come to a G.I. Joe book that is part of the Real American Hero continuity, although you didn't really need to know any continuity to appreciate this book. So this is G.I. Joe, a Real American Hero, Silent Missions Roadblock, which is the 4th, I believe, of 5 silent missions, of course, all homaging the classic silent mission by Larry Hama, Steve Lehola, and George Russo's with Snake Eyes, which actually just didn't have lettering because they were running so late. This Interesting. This was by Andrew Krenke, who art, but also script, obviously not writing because there's no plot, but script, and colors by Francesco Segala. What was interesting to me about this is I really liked the art in this was incredible. I loved the fight. I loved the physicality. The colors from Segala were wonderful. All of that stuff, major, major plus, totally, totally into it. The problem I had with this one-shot adventure, plus Roadblock doing actual roadblocking. Like, that's his name, right? He exists to like stop Cobra from getting places, and he does that here. And there's a great fight scene in it. However, this was a silent comic book that clearly had speaking in it. Like, there are points when characters are clearly speaking to each other on panel, and we just don't see it because the conceit is it being silent. I personally think that the best possible kind of silent comic, enough said style comic, has to work without us feeling like we're missing dialogue on the panel. So from the did it fit the brief perspective, I have to slightly grade it down because I do think that it was obvious that this could have benefited from some dialogue, and I would have been fine with it having dialogue. But I really, really, really loved this issue otherwise. I thought it was great. So there you go. Can we just talk for a second? So this is another one of these Pat Shand books from his, I forget what his line of comics is called off the top of my head, but he's got like the more serious ones, and then he's got the ones that are kind of boob books. And I really want to read one or two of them. So I went on this deep dive into his Kickstarter, and like, you can catch up on the Kickstarter, and you can like add, he basically runs a Kickstarter a month at this point, and you can always add his back issues to the Kickstarter. And they're like $5 or $6 digitally, which is smart, actually. I love this idea of a comic publisher that just exists as a crowdfunding publisher. And like, you basically can catch up in each of the crowdfunding campaigns. That's brilliant. Props to you, mama. But I think the problem is that there's so many of these series, and I see them pop up so frequently every month. I have no sense of like what they are, or if they go together, or if like, and this is me, I pay a lot of attention to these things. I'm trying to become your fan, Pat Shand. And I've read some issues of Your Destiny New York, which I love. So I am like, and I like female heroines, even if it does involve some boobs. So like, I am ripe for the picking here. It should be easy to hook me. And I spent probably a solid 30 minutes like on the Kickstarter, looking at the different series, seeing when they're going to come out, whatever. But the thing I fundamentally don't understand is like, what is the pace? How many of them are there? Which of them are in the same universe? How often should I expect issues to come out? He needs to just simplify. And this can't just be me. I'm sure there's plenty of people out there who see a cover like this and absolutely want to read this book. And the fact that it's like that confusing, and this is, I know that there's other people who probably would find it that confusing since they're not just on Comixology. I mean, I guess he's probably doing okay through previews, and a lot of people who buy this kind of comic are buying it through previews. But as a digital reader, I just find it confounding. And even as a physical reader reading through previews, I'm like, I don't get it. What are these series? Are they in the same universe? When is there going to be another issue? I just don't know. I just don't know. Always an instigator hoping I drop in Exquisite Court. I don't even know what that is yet because I'm not up to the 14th yet. I'm writing the posts on CK for May 7th right now. Next, I'm currently reading April 30th books. I'm literally living in the past. Hashtag Jethro Tull, hashtag 5-4 Compound Time. I don't know what that is yet, but maybe I'll read it when we get there, unless it's an anthology horror books. Then I don't care. Okay, we are going to take an official break at the eyes, so we're almost there. So if you have things you've been like waiting to say, we're almost there. So this is Green Arrow, number 23, continuing this Chris Condon run on Green Arrow with art by Montos. This to me, I'm not trying to be a hater. This to me was the first false step from Chris Condon and Montos. It's been a very tense, fun, engaging, action-filled run so far. And we get to the point where Green Arrow is finally going to track down these freshwater kills people, and it's finally going to come to a head. And it just feels like we got way too much monologuing from them, and they're just regular people, and they were just like a little bit too much superhero for me. And you've heard me go at length on past episodes complimenting the way that Montos panels action and the way that we can always tell action by action what's happening on a page. I just felt like he lost that a little bit here. So this just was probably the weakest of this run for me so far. The Adriano Lucas colors. I mean, I picked this page because sweet Jesus, the colors on this page are amazing. I like a saturated color, and I like some fantastical stuff in the colors too. So I love how red the reds are. I love that there's not that much shine. It seems like it's like 3 layers less color than the colors that I usually complain about. that's the coloring I like. So I am what I am. I can't excuse it. Plot-wise, art-wise, not the most successful. Also, the letters on this are by Hassan Othman Al-Hal. Okay. Now we come to my favorite DC book of the week, Green Lantern. This one I had trouble remembering, and I was like, why did I rate it so high if I'm having so much trouble remembering what happened in it? And then I reread it last night. And the reason I couldn't remember is because it felt like 5 issues. Like, it was so compressed. Jeremy Adams had so many setups. Zermanico, who is an amazing artist, is back on it, colored by Romalo Fajardo Jr., who's one of my favorite colorists at DC, with letters from Dave Sharp. It just all worked so well, and we got through so many scene setups that honestly it felt like a whole arc. And I think the reason I didn't remember it is because just so much stuff happened. I couldn't like boil it down to one thing. So we get this ongoing fight from the last issue. We get the DEO and Director Bones showing up, who I love. We have Star Sapphire and Green Arrow teaming up with Dove. I love seeing smaller DC characters highlighted in a book, and it just really feels like Hal has purpose right now, and he's not just being a random asshole, which is so often in the plot of a Hal Jordan book. Like, he's on the back foot a little. He wants to be pursuing the Sorrow stuff. He wants to be helping with the Green Lantern Corps being reformed. He wants to spend time with Carol Ferris, who finally is like admitted that she's in love with him again after his incel pursuit of her for the first 20 issues of this comic book. I liked so many elements of it, and it was gorgeous, and it had some like really big surprising twists. So then we go through this whole meeting with them with the DEO. That was great. Again, great. I mean, Sir Monaco's faces, his art, and then just the light touch of coloring from Fajardo Jr. here. Just so great. And then at the end, going into this like really spacey, spooky beat too, which I was like not expecting. It just had so much. I love this Green Lantern run. I am not historically a Green Lantern fan, so for a big Green Lantern fan, maybe this just sucks. I don't know. I think this might be my favorite Green Lantern run I've read since I've been back to comics since 2010. It let me have time to hate Hal Jordan, and I can still hate him here, but I can be engaged in his adventures. I love the supporting cast. I love the art. I love how many balls it's juggling. I like how it connects with Green Lantern Corps. It's just Green Lantern Corps, that Green Lantern Corps. I just love it. I love it all. I love it. I love it. I love it all. Okay. We're almost to the eyes, and I see you're asking some interesting questions. We're going to get there. Green Lantern Dark, I'm not reading. Tate Bromball, I'm a little soft on right now. Werther Della I like from some things killing the children, and then it's Elseworlds. Too many factors working against it. Grimm Fairy Tales. We know I F with this book a lot. So this is a one-shot, the Once Upon the End of Time one-shot, and they're teasing that they're going to put an end to this Grimm Fairy Tales universe, which is concerning to me, who loves it. But also, you have to remember that they've always done this universe in 10-year increments, because the first 10 years was pretty much from 2006, when they just started as like weird, booby, shocking, Alice in Wonderland comics, and it developed into this whole fairy tale universe. And then in 2016, they basically ended all of the existing universe and all the existing characters, and then rebooted it with Skye Mathers, who's the daughter of the original protagonist. And we've had now 10 years of that, which I've read just about every issue of, which is crazy. And I love this world, and I love it when it's a high quality. And I will say, to kick off a big event that's going to run through the next couple of months, the quality was there in this issue. You often hear me feeling challenged of like, would I recommend one of these Zenescope books to you? This was one I would. Story by Joe Bruscia and Dave Francini, who are the brain trust there. Written by Joe Bruscia, the art by Alessandro Uezu, and then also Rivero Unai Desarte. I'm sorry, the credits of this have typos in them. The art was amazing. I've never really seen them do this particular style of art. Great colors here from Maxwell and Araggio. Great letters from Taylor Esposito. This is not the house style of them. It almost reminds me of Mark Silvestri on Cyberforce a little bit. I love the sharpness of the line work. I love the paneling. I love like getting a chance to see these characters do acting. Then we have a really lengthy action sequence between this Father Time guy and Belle, who's probably my favorite of the heroes that are based in Philadelphia in the Zenescope world. It gets a little repetitive at points. It feels like Father Time is like still saying the same thing over and over again. But Thanos does that too. We can't grade them too hard for that. But I just really, really loved it. And it had a shocking twist at the end. It did something with a character that I was not a fan of for that character, but it was in the service of a really interesting story. And I really feel like this universe is at risk right now. I'm like, oh my gosh, are we really, really gonna like, are we gonna reboot? Or are they just gonna shut it down? They've got that separate superhero universe they've started recently with the other continuity in the books. What was that book that we read that was hilarious? White Tiger. So I'm like, oh my gosh, are they giving up the like old school universe? Or are they gonna reboot it? Are we getting ready for universe version 3? I have so many questions. So it's totally engaged me, and you will hear a week-to-week account of what is going on. So I can try to get some of you eventually hooked on Zenescope. But if you just wanted to dip into Zenescope for like 3 months and just check it out and like read the end of their universe, you know, Jonathan Hickman style, this is the book to start with. And I will say this issue was worth every penny. I thought the art was incredible. It was a really fun story. I felt like it was all of the best elements of the Zenescope universe. Okay. Gunslinger, which is actually Gunslinger Spawn. They haven't changed it in the Indicia. Oh no, actually they did change it. Okay, here's something fun. I guess I can show my credits PDF, right? They changed it in you can't see this because it's tiny. They changed it in the Indicia. It's just Gunslinger now. Gunslinger number 42. So when something changes in the Indicia, technically all of these comic book sites like comics.org and League and Comics Vine, they should change the title because the true title is not what's on the cover of a book. It's the Indicia title. Anyway, I will change it in my notes, I suppose. So this is written by Todd McFarlane, art by Carlo Barberi, so good, and colors from Ivan Nunes. I love this issue. It just finally went somewhere. All it takes is for Todd to establish a plot beat and then kind of like get out of his way. The world is interesting enough. The characters are interesting enough. The art is good enough that really carries. And so he basically is like, look, Gunslinger's on the hunt for something. He's got to team up with an angel for it, but people are on the hunt for them. That's enough plot. It gets us out of this like washing machine spin cycle that we've been stuck in for like 5 issues where nothing feels like it's going to go anywhere. I still don't fully understand what's happening. I've got to be honest, but it was enough to keep me engaged. I love the way that, Carlo Barberi is doing these panels where they're just panels without any borders on them at all. They just hang on the white, and then one element of a character will pop outside of the panel, like the hat on Gunslinger there, or then Tom Orzechowski popping out the letters on each of these panels. I just find that so dynamic and so fun to read, and it really like pulls my eye along. I love the colors by Nunes. This is fun. It's never going to be my favorite of the Spawn books, but I do have faith that Todd McFarlane can tell interesting stories when they're smaller and when he gets out of his way. There were 1 or 2 caption boxes in here. They were a little bit questionable. He still needs an editor. Me, they, them. But I really did enjoy this, and this is why I'm reading Spawn, because I get a lot of enjoyment when it gets out of its own way. Okay, Harley Quinn. You know, sometimes I wonder when I come out really strong on an initial issue and then I kind of like taper off as a run goes on and everybody else hated it. And at the beginning, I'm like, no, it's good. It's good. I wonder, am I just being fair and like, am I just evaluating each issue as it comes without kind of like projecting forward that's going to fail? Or do I just have rose-colored glasses and I'm rooting for everything and you all can tell that something sucks? Because this kind of sucked. And I've been on this run's side consistently throughout it. I think Elliot Kalan, the writer, is very, very funny. Part of it for me, though, is I don't like Mirka Andolfo's art. And I know that is controversial. I know that she's somebody who's like a big, she's got her following, but it just was too destructed, too cartoony, too like the character has different features in every panel. And I know that's something a lot of people like. It's manga derived, it's very webtoons. It's not my style that I appreciate. So I just kind of was like, oh, I wish Cindy Lee was still here. I love her art, but still this plot that Harley's in a fight with her own brain, it just didn't really ring for me. It didn't really work for me. And like Harley always is smart. So the idea that her brain is being extra smart and she's fighting against it to be stupid, it just struck me as really wrong for the character. And it really made me wonder, like, has this run been terrible from the begin with and I am just now opening my eyes to the truth, or have I been right in saying this run has been really fun and different for Harley all along, and maybe just this one issue was not super to my liking. Maul is here. Glad I caught up midstream. Just got done watching Lilo and Stitch with the kids. Kid Crisis loves that movie. James Abel saying, I love Mirka Andolfo's art in this issue, but the plot, I've seen something like this before, and Harley's social analysis herself of all times. Yeah, it just felt very done before. It felt very unexciting. It just didn't ring true for the character. Jarl says it was his first modern Harley issue and really liked it. Made me chuckle and love the art. So see, there's a whole range of opinions here. But I think Harley is a character that has such hardcore fans that when the fans don't like a certain run, they drown out any ability to check in on the run and inform your opinion on the run. And so when they'll decide they don't like a run for any crazy reason, like Poison Ivy, she's not doting on Poison Ivy enough that, or she's the hyenas aren't in enough. They get nasty. And everybody's like that. I'm like that for X-Men to a degree. People are like that about Spider-Man. But I do think that with Harley, sometimes there's this like sentiment of like, oh, that's a Harley run that sucked. But that's a sentiment coming from this Harley fan hardcore who is only going to be happy if she's written by Paul Dini or Amanda Connor and like will accept no substitutes. And then I think what happens is that like we lose the fidelity of being able to judge for ourselves if some of the Harley runs are good, including I really, really, really love the run that came after Amanda Connor and Jimmy Palmiotti, which was, I think, Sam Humphries. And people, I think, just hated on it because it was not Connor and Palmiotti. And I was like, this is hilarious. This is the Harley Quinn I've always thought I was supposed to be reading. So I would just say, as always, interrogate your comics, form your own opinions, separate from mine. I had to drop Hornsby and Halo. I just hated too many issues in a row. I love Peter Tomasi. Peter Schneisberg's art is great. I might read this collected or in trade, but it was just too slow moving for me. And like, you had 5 issues with an angel and a devil on Earth, and this is the only story you could think to. It just didn't push it far enough for me. So that's a drop. Unfortunately, Ghost Machine, I'm having a rocky road with Ghost Machine. I will say, I'm trying. I keep giving things a try. So this is, sorry, it's a whole thing. The titles have to have file names that sort before the interiors, and I go back and I redo it. It's a whole thing. So anyway, I don't know why I'm apologizing. I do all this for free. This is the Infinity Watch number 4 by Derek Landy and Enid Balam and Ruari Coleman splitting art duties with colors from Brian Reber and letters from Corey Petit. After having a pretty big-brained through few issues of this is, oh right, because we go higher for the, this is just the fight scene. It's a very good fight scene. I think the art in it is tremendous, great colors. It's motivated because we've had a few issues to really wait for the resolutions of this, but it's just a fight scene. It's a fight scene. It's a fight scene. It was fun. I really like this team. I would very happily read an ongoing with them. I've seen zero news or buzz about this, so I think this is just going to quietly go away. But like, it just feels like so often in a comic, and we're going to come to one a little bit later from Marvel, a team gets put together purely for marketing purposes, it feels like, and there's no really compelling connection or tension between them. I feel a lot of compelling connection between this team, and I find them really interesting because they're all these stone bearers. They didn't ask for that. They're not necessarily good at it, and they don't necessarily like each other. And to me, that's interesting. Okay. That was Infinity Watch. I didn't read Into the Unbeing, despite it having art from Hayden Sherman, because I just never vibe with the Zach Thompson comic books. I just don't vibe. Doesn't mean he's a bad person. I just don't vibe. This is It's Jeff, by Kelly Thompson and Good Hero. This, of course, is the digital comic book of It's Jeff. There's going to be a physical one coming soon. Maybe it's already out and I'm just not there yet. I don't need a minute for this. Jeff goes to the puppy daycare to get a bath because he's smelly, but of course he's a shark. So even though he's a land shark, he loves the bath. It's really cute. It's cute. It took about 60 seconds to read, and it was 60 seconds of pure joy and happiness in my life, and I would not give that away for anything. And that brings us to the end of the eyes, which is when I said I was going to take my break. So first I need a sip of water, which is somewhere off camera, where I hope I remember bringing it into this room. Here we go. Okay. Let's go back for a few. I'm going to work bottom to top and just do some comments that you made that were not related to the actual books. Yes, me actuallying about the Indicia title being the real title, which gets confusing, especially in the 70s when a book would change the title on the cover before the Indicia would change or slightly after. So Uncanny X-Men, I think, does that. Superboy and the Legion of Superheroes. So it makes it really confusing because some Legion does it many times. Teen Titans does it, because then when you're trying to describe a comic book and you're saying you're trying to describe it accurately per the title that the issue actually has, that doesn't make any sense to somebody who's in like a long box or a digital, platform being like, but that's not what the title on the cover says. And it's like, well, that's because the title on the cover doesn't always match the Indicia title. Talking about exquisite corpses, always an instigator saying Michael Walsh on art, Jordy B on colors, Becca Carey on letters, Nailbiter meets the Purge with Battle Royale. And that's a new James Tinian series. Of course, we know I love Tinian. You know, when I see the name Exquisite Corpses, often that is a signifier of a story where many different people are going to write it or have a hand in it, because an exquisite corpse style of storytelling or plotting means like everybody takes a piece. So that's why I thought it was going to be an anthology. But if it's straight up Tinian, I will read it and almost certainly love it. John Paul's asking, did I find a way to read Furlough? I don't even remember what that means. Is that a book that I said I wanted to read in past weeks? It's been a month, so you got to remind me of my own lore here. I don't know. Apparently, I haven't found a way to read it yet. Lance, all right, we have to have a deep talk about Andor season 2. So I watched the first episode and loved it. I watched the second episode, and that one female mechanic character was being harassed by the Imperial trooper, and I was like, this has shades of threats of sexual violence to me. And one of the things I love about the Star Wars universe is it's somewhat asexual. Yeah, there's chaste kisses between brother and sister, as one does. I don't have siblings. But even Leia she's a sex slave to Jabba the Hutt, right? But like, it's this chaste, desexualized version of sex slave. Do we get there's never, her agency has been threatened as a character and as a woman, but we never have to like think about the reality of what Jabba does with his sex slaves, or I never have in over 40 years of watching that movie. And I like that about Star Wars. I frequently think to myself out loud in my head as I'm engaging with any Star Wars. I love that this is just a universe where there is violence, but there's a limit to the violence, and there is sexuality and orientation, but there's a limit to the amount of explicitness to the sexuality. And that also means there's a limit to the effect that there's really not sexual violence as a threat against anyone, but especially against female characters. So after watching that second episode, I asked Max, because I knew Max was ahead of me in Andor, I said, is there going to be a sexual violence plot? And he said there was. So I am no longer watching Star Wars. Or at least not Star Wars by Tony Gilroy. It could be a great show. It's just not for me. It's not only not for me because I don't like sexual violence plots in general, but I so specifically watch Star Wars to not have sexual violence plots that I just was so disappointed that it was being brought into Andor, which I think is the peak of Star Wars. Then I got into a really interesting discussion with someone in my life who is a cis woman, who's basically saying it made her uncomfortable, but she loved it because to her, to watch a fictional universe with no threat of sexual violence against women feels like total fiction. She's like, that's something I have to think about every time I walk on the street. That's something I have to think about every time I get on a bus. So how can I appreciate the veracity of the world building in Star Wars if the women never have to worry about their sexual agency? And I'm like, wow, that's really interesting. And a very interesting and valid opinion to come from a cis woman telling me about that. I want to hear that, right? My opinion isn't always right. And, from my perspective, it's like, yeah, but if it's a male creator and Tony Gilroy is the only writer on that show, it just feels like if you want to tell that story about how all women are all threatened everywhere and it's part of their lives, where's the women working on it? Like, so maybe did that episode of a woman director, I forget if it did or didn't, it may have, but that's where my eye goes. I'm like, okay, you want to talk about the veracity of being a woman? Like, is there somebody telling that story that's not a man? So I wound up having a really interesting conversation about it. Maybe eventually I will watch the rest of Andor and just skip that episode. And it's so interesting. It's not even specifically triggering to me to watch a plot like that. It just makes me angry. And it's so specifically what I don't want from Star Wars. So there's 5 minutes of me talking about Star Wars. Always an instigator asking, there's rumors of Hunter Schafer being cast as Mystique. I famously do not care about movies or the MCU. I vaguely know who Hunter Schafer is because I believe she is trans or non-binary. Maybe, I don't know. It's just ringing that bell in my head. In which case, yeah, I love a genderqueer reading of Mystique. Go off. Will I see that movie? No. So it doesn't really matter to me. I think, and this was when we were talking about Hush. I can't recall how I've been feeling about the last Halloween, but Loeb is kind of coming in with Grandpa is sundowning and telling the same stories again, but a little different energy. That's very well put. I have a love-hate relationship with Loeb. I think he's horrible at Marvel, but I do like him at DC. I enjoy his ability to do these retcon type plots, but keep a consistent tone with the tone that he's set in the past for them. I think something that often bothers me about Mark Waid doing these retcon plots is that it gets like so silly, jokey, laughy that it's like, it's not consistent to Mark Waid's own work. It's not fully consistent to the Silver Age or whatever other age it's drawn from. It's just like its own tone. And I think that that's what I really struggle with Mark Waid doing that kind of stuff. With Loeb, I never, and that's funny because the next book on the list is a Mark Waid throwbacky book. With Loeb, I never have to worry about that. So I do appreciate his tonal consistency. Are his plots like the most exciting plots in the world right now? Not necessarily, but I love that he's working with Jim Lee. You know, again, I love that he's doing Last Halloween as a tribute to his very good friend and collaborator, Trim Simsale. So I do appreciate that. All right, let's see if there's any new comments, and then we will keep going. How can X-Men get back in the right track at Marvel Comics? What would you do to get it back in the right direction? You know, to reference that, I have to reference Peter David, who seldom, if ever, wrote a issue of a main flagship X-Men title, but of course wrote X-Factor for many, many years. I think you've got to just honor the things that are great about the characters, and you've got to find a way to make them grow while also honoring the thing that people find familiar about them. And I think the problem in the line right now is that it's introducing so many new characters in these flagships, but at the same time, not always getting the current characters right or real. And I think that that is what makes it feels like a regression, because Krakoa, for all of its positives and negatives, was very good at addressing the truth of these characters. Sometimes they grew in ways that were unexpected and wasn't really liked by longtime fans. But I think when you have like a whole issue of Jubilee mentoring someone, and she doesn't mention she was a vampire and she doesn't mention she's a mom, it starts to feel like, well, why are we even making these X-Men comics? So I do think that you've got to lean into the truth of the characters. However, that doesn't solve everything, right? X-Force was, and we'll talk about it later, I think was pretty good at leading into the truth of the characters, and X-Force was pretty remarkably bad by the end of the run there. So I do think also there's just got to be a sense that of purpose behind these plots. Like right now, it really feels like each of the marketing names for these books, Storm, Phoenix, X-Force, NYX, whatever, are just being used in this very cynical marketing to people who already love them way, which is, I think, shows through with the fact that they're using all the classic logos on the books, and the logos have no consistent visual identity across all of them. It's just this constant nostalgia play. And I think if you're going to do that, that's fine. Nostalgia plays can work, but like, okay, so why is it called X-Force? Okay, so why is it important that this is NYX? And I think some of the books are doing that better than others. But I think they don't have the juice creatively on the writing team to make it work right now across the amount of books they want to put out. They need about half as many books. They need a stronger bench of writers. They can't just use the same old Marvel writers. They got to go to indie and find some different people who've got some new and different ideas. And I think the titles need an amount of veracity and reason to be the titles that they are. And I think the character voices need to be centered on who they are and their growth without being slavishly devoted to referencing every single element of their continuity. To use a positive example, I think Eve Ewing is doing a good job with that with Kitty on Exceptional X-Men. I think she got handed a weird hand with where Kitty came from the end of Jerry Duggan's run, and I feel like editorially they were told, make Kitty regret killing people, and that's the place that Eve Ewing had to start from. And Dr. Ewing, I think, did a great job starting from there, acknowledging who Kitty has been and how she has changed, and still showing meaningful ways that she's changed, while still turning back the dial a little bit on some ways that she matured, because it wasn't going to jive with the version of the character she wanted to write in that book. That's success. And I just think not enough of the books are having that success. There is a new physical It's Jeff paperback that has the first 24 issues of the digital comic, as well as the deeply, deeply, deeply hilarious It's Jeff Venom War one-shot. It was so funny. I'm thinking about getting it because I just love Good Hero and I love Clay Thompson, and I know I could give it to Kid Crisis. So if I've already missed, it already came out, so I missed the pre-order window in DCBS. Maybe when I make my next IST order, but also like I don't need that. Like they're digital comics, they're on Marvel Unlimited. I don't need to spend the money on it, but I do think I should just do a Jeff guide. It'd be fun. I've read all the issues anyway. It's not gonna be hard, and he's like, you know, the search traffic is through the roof on Jeff. So that would be. Oh, sorry. I guess I should have said spoilers, but I feel like I only on Andor, I only really spoiled one plot element. I don't think I said anything about anything that happens other than there's a threat of sexual violence, which is a trigger warning. So I truly don't think I spoiled anything, but I guess maybe I did. Sorry if I did. I didn't mean to spoil. I've heard people saying that Andor added so much to Rogue One. As a noted Rogue One hater, I do look forward to one day, possibly several decades from now, making time to watch the rest of Andor, skipping that episode, and then rewatching Rogue One and see if I hate it less. Okay, so Exquisite Corpse's other creators will be joining Tinian and Walsh to co-create and co-draw. Lance responding to my Andor monologue, respecting that view. I'll say the apprehensions I had about that, but I did how that probably was ultimately handled. Well, I can't say if you did like how that problem was handled. Well, that encourages me slightly. I might come back to it later this year. Okay. I really don't think I did spoilers. I'm sorry. I was just talking about sexual assault. Okay. Any books I'm excited about coming out this summer? I have no idea yet because I'm still like a month behind on looking at solicits. So I don't know. I truly don't know. I know there's going to be the new Thor. I know I'm excited for Fraction on Batman with Jorge Jimenez. I know that's going to be something fun. I'm excited for Zdarsky and Cap, but those are easy answers. I just don't know yet. I don't know. Okay, Ryan North is doing a nostalgia play currently, correctly in FF. What a great point. Yeah, FF, great point of you can do a nostalgia play centered on the characters, centered on their voices, centered on their experiences, and it really, really works. Kane asking me if I would do a room tour. So there is a tour on the channel. If you search for like moving 25,000 comic books, you will find it on my channel or on YouTube, where I moved into this house and moved all the comics, and you really can see them. The problem about doing a room tour is it's just so spread out. I have this room, and then and there's only so many shelves I could fit in this room and through the door of this room. And there's the other wall is a window, so I can't put shelves there. So then I have another set of shelves in the bedroom. Then I have another set of shelves in the spare room downstairs. So it would be a lot. And then I have the stacks in the garage. I was thinking it would be fun to do this live from the garage one week, which would be a hot mess. I don't know if my internet extends down to the garage, but I have started to consider that. So maybe, and plus it's cold in there over the winter. It's about to be winter here right now, but I think there's a chance, but I don't know if I would just do a room tour of walking around. It'd probably have to be a video that I edit, because I just had to go through so much of the house to like get to the different shelves, and I'm not doing any edited videos right now, but definitely a chance for that to happen. Yes. Okay. Apologies. And again, I really don't think I spoiled anything other than that. What do I think of the creative team for the new Punisher series? You know, I saw that he's coming back in a red band. I don't think I saw who the creator. Let me just Punisher red band. Who is doing it? Who is doing it? Percy. I don't know if I'm excited about Percy writing Punisher. I think he's got the right level of brutality for it, but and actually Punisher might work better as some of his books have worked for me, but I just feel like he gets a little too hyper-focused on making things edgy and violent. But I did like his Green Arrow, which had like a commentary aspect to it, which I hope his Punisher has a little bit of a social commentary too, because I think you can use that for Punisher. Julius Ota, I think, is a tremendous artist. I'm so sad to see that he's already off of Iron Man, because I feel like he very much defined the look of this new Iron Man run, and then to pull him off for Punisher is a little bit annoying. Okay. Let's I don't play games, Small 360. Where? With what time? Because you're having so much fun with that game. Here's the one kind of game I will consistently play. I love a tower defense game. I remember back in the Congregate days, there was like this desktop tower defense where you like drew little towers that were like paper clips or whatever, and they just shot little bubbles. I just love, that's how I listen to music. Any kind of game where I just set up a bunch of things that go pew, 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 and then little people walk through and die. That's the only game. That's the only kind of game that I play. I do have a Switch, which I got for Kid Crisis because she really wanted to play my old Super Nintendo, which like needs a new battery in the actual Nintendo or in the game cartridges. I don't know. So I do love an RPG occasionally. And when my teeth were killing me last week, I played through Final Fantasy 1 and 2 and some of 3, but I just don't play games. I would not have time to read the comic books. Okay, back. Speaking of which, that was a lovely, lovely rejuvenating break. Let's finish up these comic books, shall we? Okay. This is Justice League Unlimited, which is the Justice League ongoing, number 6. It is chapter 2 of the unfortunately titled We Are Yesterday, which seems to really emphasize the backwards navel-gazing nature of DC and Mark Waid at this time. It's plotted by Waid along with Christopher Cantwell. That's interesting. Is Cantwell going to start writing Justice League Unlimited? Also, art from Travis Moore, who I love. He was so amazing on Wonder Woman. Colored there as He Is Here by Tamara Bonvillain, and letters by Dave Sharp. This is the big reveal issue. This plot is alternating with the plot in World's Finest. So we got a flashback to an old Gorilla Grodd story in World's Finest. And then here we get the current day revealing what Gorilla Grodd has been up to and how he kind of set up this whole shenanigans that is leading to the villain group known as Inferno threatening the Justice League. It was good for a big reveal issue. I think, that's just the conceit. You have to be ready to set aside all of the current characters and all the current plots and just sit down and read all the stuff getting unfurled. I just love Travis Moore's art so much. So I think I mostly was enjoying this for the art. I like the idea that Mark Waid is like using Gorilla Grodd as a real heavy here, and like just the idea of like, here's how he can be really threatening. He's not just a joke. He can be scary. But then for his whole plot to be like, I'm going to bring back past versions of the Legion of Doom or the League of Doom, whatever the hell they're called, and they're going to be scarier now, even though they're the past versions of them that were total failures. I guess there's a certain amount of intelligence to that plot of like, if I pick the right, what if I go back in time and pick the best version of the Joker and the best version of Lex Luthor, which might have not all happened at the same time, but it just, to me as a plot, doesn't work. It's like, I'm going back in time to pick failures to fail again. That's how it reads to me. So yeah, I can't say that I'm too excited, but really good story, great artwork. I just find this overall plot somehow boring. Killer Cobra. Here's another great Zetascope book. So this is a 3-issue miniseries. It does appear to be in the main Grimm universe. It has a little cover bug saying that. It's written by Joe Bruscia with art from Rodrigo Xavier, colors from Leonardo Paciarotti, and letters from Taylor Esposito. This was good. I heartily recommend this. It was basically like Zetascope does Shang-Chi, but in a really funny way. And the thing that worked for me for it, first of all, the art was extraordinarily good. Like this would be good, not just for Zetascope, good anywhere. Great colors, great texture in the colors, great likenesses of this guy. He's basically like a Shang-Chi Iron Fist character. And he has this little, he's not a ferret. He's specifically not a ferret. And I forget what he is in the comic book, but he's this little stoat type creature that talks to him and he trains with him. So it gives there like a little bit of built-in humor. So he goes and this guy, Killer Cobra, investigates like cryptids. And so he's like off to investigate a killing by Bigfoot. So it's almost like Shang-Chi does X-Files, but then also has like a sarcastic Disney sidekick animal who talks to him. And it was a perfect stack of absurdity. And because the art was so good and it's like funny. So at this point he's chasing Bigfoot and Bigfoot is like trying to get him to not chase him. So he throws a tree trunk and then he throws a skunk and then he throws a bear trap. And it's just, this is obviously silly, obviously heightened in that he would be throwing a dumpster and there's toilet paper. But what a really funny use of like across the page panel and then a 6-panel grid in place of just doing a 9-panel grid on the whole page. I just laughed consistently throughout the book. It was just really fun. I really liked it. If you're looking for a one-off Zetascope series that you don't need to know any kind of continuity or anything about, this would be a perfectly good one to read. And I really enjoyed it. I dropped The Last Boy. In thinking about the first issue of this Dan Panosian version of Peter Pan, it just was exactly the Peter Pan story I've read 1,000 times already. Peter Pan's, everybody's getting old except for Peter Pan. Captain Hook is fine now, but Peter Pan still wants to kill him. Like, who cares? We know that story already. There was just nothing about it that hooked me other than the cover artwork, which is Panosian drawing it, which is not the interior artwork. And the interior artwork was like, meh. So I dropped it. Oh, well. I really was actually quite interested in reading Lilith from Vault, but Vault has been having so many shipping problems that I've kind of just given up on trying to follow their books. Then I saw that this actually came out on time and I could have caught up with it, but Vault editorially doesn't always really excite me. So if one of you tells me it's really good, I see ladies holding hands and with devil and angel wings and I get excited because that's the kind of comic book I like. So if any of you out there are enjoying it and you tell me that you enjoy it, maybe I'll go back and read it. You know what, that heavy sigh that I do, it's just getting to be a heavy sigh, not about any one Marvel book, but just the idea of Marvel Comics, because they're so bad right now. Like, they need a top-down clean house of their entire editorial team because things are just going so wrong at this time at Marvel Comics. So this is magic. Here's the thing that's going right. Ashley Allen brings in Danny Moonstar. and they're great together. And Herman Peralta is an incredible artist. The colors from Arthur Hesley are great. From a look standpoint, this book is extraordinary. I love the action. I love the beats. Ashley Allen just needs an editor who's a better editor than who is the editor on this book. Darren Shan, who's actually a pretty good editor. Maybe we can lay the blame at assistant editor Noah Sharma, or possibly conductor of X, Tom Brevoort. I hate that. Because this book, it just exposits so hard that the exposition comes back around to being confusing to me. Like it exposited so much that I was like, was I supposed to know this already? Did I miss something? And it just wasn't fun. Like every page was a wall of text. And I am somebody who likes comics that are full of text, but I just felt like everything about it was so over explained that there's just no room to like enjoy what was happening. And not even in like a Silver Age Stan Lee way. It just really, Ashley Allen's not ready for prime time. She's just not. I'm sorry. I thought she was. I really liked her issue number 1, but we're 4 issues deep in this. She clearly understands who Ileana is, but just the writing is just remedial. It's clearly somebody who just graduated from the Milestone program and has no experience under their belt. And like, hey, I was the one who just said Marvel should take a chance and have more new writers on their books. So thank you for taking a chance, but let's just wrap this up and get a writer who knows what they're doing on Magic. Sorry, I'm no hate. I mean, Ashley Allen has a lot of good instincts. I don't think she's doing anything technically bad. I think her stories are moving along decently, but like just the mediocrity and the newbiness of the over narration of the past 3 issues really has turned me off to getting excited about this. Still loving this Marvel Rivals Unlimited comic though. This is by Paul Allor. Oh, sorry. A little bit of confusion there. This is by Paul Allor with art by Daniel Scalisi and color from D. Cuniff and letters from Joe Sabino. It's just fun. It's on Unlimited. Read it. It's in its own continuity. It's not even in the continuity fully of the game. They're on Krakoa. Why does that keep happening? They're on Krakoa. They're fighting on Krakoa against Ultrons. Ultron wants to take over the Resurrection Cradle. It's awesome. This should have been a plot in real Krakoa X-Men. It's incredible. Paul Allor. I don't know if this is from the game or what, because I don't game, as we've established. But yeah, but this is a really fun plot. Really, really love it. Turtles of Grayskull. I do love He-Man and I do enjoy Ninja Turtles, but I am not reading this crossover, although it is by Tim Seeley, so I probably would like it. Medieval Spawn number 1. So this is by Marco Itri. Oh no, that's the artist. It's script and plot by Rory McConville, and Todd McFarlane doesn't even have an additional plot credit on this one. Art by Marco Itri. Colors from Ulysses Arreola, who's the colorist on Absolute Superman, who's fantastic. Lettering from And World Design. So this Medieval Spawn's a kind of confusing character. He was a Spawn, textually, literally, in the Middle Ages, and he's now in the present day as his Spawn persona, occupying somebody else's body and semi-controlling it. But originally he was a Spawn symbiote that attached to a real person. And so this explores his past. The art was incredible and the story was pretty good. I mean, it was the story of him kind of having this town-to-town fight to try to defend them against the forces of darkness that people don't even realize are kind of consorting amongst them. It just felt a little anonymous to me in terms of like the characters and who they are, and this band of characters, and this young boy joins them, but his village got overrun. It felt very characters out of central casting to me, but it was good and the art was really good. So I'm really, I'm fine to keep reading it. And Rory McConville usually does a decent job on McFarlane Universe books. It didn't feel specific enough. Like, oh my gosh, you have Medieval Spawn, who's like the coolest looking of all of the Spawns. And there's so much you can do with him, having him in the Middle Ages, having dragons, having cool stuff. And it just felt very like warmed over Braveheart to me. But maybe we're going to go somewhere more interesting. I dropped Metamorpho of the Element Man. I just cannot do Al Ewing writing this 60s pastiche. I don't read Minor Arcana because it's Jeff Lemire. This looked really cool to me. It's only released 1 issue per year, and I have no idea what it's about. It's issue 3 of 3 though, so Tim Sparvo, you made it. Miranda and the Eternal Quest. I didn't even look, maybe it's on Global Comics. I didn't even look it up. It just looked really funny to me. Like, why is this giant pink lady in a chainmail bikini, and why somehow the green lady reminded me of Steven Universe. I don't know. It just made me smile. Okay. I don't read Monstrous because I do not like this omnipresent texture on every piece of art that Sonic Takeda does. It gives me a headache. Moonshine Bigfoot we read last week. For some reason, all online sources still think it came out on April the 23rd. Maybe it came out physically on the 23rd. It came out digital on the 16th. New Champions. This is by Steve Fox with art from Ivan Fiorelli, color from Arthur Hesley, letters from China Slanham. I have really been trying to give this book the benefit of the doubt and say some good things about it, because I do think for the past couple of issues, Steve Fox has made a point that like there is a reason for these young characters to exist, and they are interesting, and it is interesting to follow them. But this book, The Origin of Gold Tiger, it just felt like the most basic, super plain, unimaginative YA story about superheroes ever. It just felt like a random book from like Boom or Oni Press. Nothing about it felt Marvel. Nothing about it felt special. The art, however, by Ivan Fiorelli, colored by Arthur Hesley. I'm really starting to like Arthur Hesley as a colorist, and I just think this is great art for a young team. But Steve Fox's story, he's got nothing. I mean, the story of the origin of Gold Tiger, Gold Panther, whatever the hell her name is, it's exactly the thing you think it is. It's so Gold Tiger. It's just, do more, Steve Fox. You have a whole book with all these young characters that are drawn from every corner of the Marvel universe. There's got to be more you can do than this. I don't read Null Hunter from Michael Walsh. I did, unfortunately, read One World Under Doom. And as a great lover and supporter of Ryan North, I feel like, much like Al Ewing, maybe he needs a vacation, because not only is this event horrible, and this is one of those ones where everybody else said it was horrible in the first issue. I was like, no, the first issue is great. And now I hated issue 2 and 3. Did they know something I didn't? Or are they just sourpusses and I'm actually speaking the real truth? I don't know. But this was embarrassing to read. It's by Ryan North. It's by R.B. Silva. It's by David Curiel, who I love and prefer as a colorist on Pepe Larraz to Mark DeGracia, and letters by Travis Lanham. It just seems like the only way that North knows how to write any conflict in this universe right now is to make every hero act like they've never acted before and be totally stupid. And those events, when people do that at Marvel, that never goes well. People never look back at those events fondly. Civil War and Civil War II, especially, if you've got to write every Marvel character out of character in order to make your event work, that is not going to be a fan favorite event going forward. And I don't understand why Ryan North is doing it, because Ryan North is good at characters, and he's good at these characters in specific. It seems like he's really struggling to define why the Avengers would have a problem with this seemingly benevolent version of Doom. And in that struggle, he's having all of them act and speak completely out of character. And then he brings in a bunch of villains here in a very similar way that Jed MacKay did in Avengers 25. But here we're supposed to take these villains very seriously. Like, we're like, oh yeah, the Avengers need Arcade's help. It just doesn't track. It doesn't track that they would ask for his help, nor does it track that Arcade would have a single thing to offer in this campaign against Doom. This was like the negative reflection of that Avengers issue, which was so good, so smart, so witty, so on character. This was just dumb. It's dumb. The whole thing is dumb. And it's dragging down North's writing on Fantastic Four, because ever since Fantastic Four has had to tie into One World Under Doom, nobody's acting like themselves in Fantastic Four either. You know, I love rooting for a certain writer. I love being in somebody's corner. And sometimes you root for a writer so hard, and when they get the chance on the big stage, they crush it. We got to see that with, you know, Kieran Gillen doing Judgment Day Axe. A lot of people talk about it. Dude, that was the best Marvel crossover they've had in many, many years. We've seen Al Ewing get to step up and do really well in some of his books. I just think we've been rooting for Ryan North to step up. I was so excited to see him step up here, but he's really just proving that this is not his bag. He really should just keep on writing series that he can kind of keep slightly off to the side and focus just on the characters in that series, because him trying to write across the whole Marvel universe is a unmitigated disaster as far as I'm concerned. Out of Alcatraz issue number 2, this reminds me, I have a retraction from a previous week. In my mind, Tyler Crook and Tyler Boss are the same human being, because one of them's a crook and one of them's a boss. But no, they're different. This was good. I love this. It's the true story that's not actually true of these two men that broke out of Alcatraz. They're assumed to have drowned in real life, and almost certainly did, but this supposes what if they didn't? And they have somebody who's been collaborating with them on the outside, who's kind of promised them that they're going to have a job or something to do. But this is the 60s, I think, or early 70s. So it's not just like they have to build a life, and it's easier in some ways because there's no like digital trail, but it's harder in other ways because they have to like reestablish themselves in the outside world, and they're beholden to these people that broke them out. And it's really, there are also just some really interesting cultural factors here between the two guys and kind of like the different social classes that they come from in their backgrounds. This woman who's actually an African-American and she's white passing. And so she kind of like uses her white passing privilege in a lot of situations, but sometimes it works for her, sometimes it doesn't. All really interesting stuff being written by Christopher Cantwell. And also this did have a little hint of a sexual assault plot that crossed from issue 1 to 2. And it didn't, I never looked askance at it. I never looked at it sideways, even though these are two, as far as I know, cis men who are creating the book, because it didn't feel like it was exploitative in some way. It was just a minor beat, and the woman definitely seemed like she could take care of herself, and the guys kind of, it turned into like a bigger plot that had nothing to do with sexual assault because of the way they all respond to this minor threat that was, I mean, not the threat of sexual assault is minor, but the minor threat that was made against her in the scope of the story kind of gets blown out of proportion and really changes the course of the plot. And I thought that was really, really interesting. I don't read Overwatch comics because it's a video game, but the art on this cover, very, very cute. Overwatch 2, Doki Watch. I don't know what that means. I did read Peacemaker Presents Vigilante and Eagly double feature. I'm liking the Eagly half of this better, which is written by Rex Ogle with pencils and inks by Matteo Lolli and colors by John Callas and letters by Pep Rousseau. This A story by Tim Seeley with Mitch Gerads and letters by Pep Rousseau, I just feel like it veers pretty hard into the Peter or the James Gunn humor, the very scatological humor, the very every joke is about masturbation and dicks. I just get so bored. That's when I don't like James Gunn. And I know I said about the first issue of this that I like it, that kind of humor in a comic book rather than on screen, because I can alter my speed. I can go past it quickly instead of having to linger on his boring dick jokes that every single James Gunn thing has all through them constantly. But here the whole thing was basically a dick joke. So I just couldn't skip past it at a high speed because it kept happening. And there's nothing wrong with dicks. 49% of the world has them. They can be a wonderful thing. But I just need a little bit more textual content in my comic book. But I did enjoy, even though there were also dick jokes, this B story with Eagly. It just really captures the absolutely ridiculous nature of Peacemaker, both as a DC comic character, but very much the James Gunn comic character. And here it felt like even though there were male genital jokes, it just felt like it was at his expense. And it wasn't just there to like try to make me chuckle. Although I guess it was there to make me chuckle because they're at his expense, but I don't know. It just worked better for me in that story than in the other story. Now, unfortunately, we come to the power fantasy. So here, you've heard me say so many wonderful things about Kieran Gillen over the years. Now, Kieran, cover your ears. Here's the one negative thing I have to say about him. Sometimes Kieran Gillen gets so wound up in the canon that he's created that it feels like he wants to tell a story that has no cliff notes, that he's like, you'll get me, you'll follow. This is the deep truth. And not only does he not bring you along on it, but it sometimes is missing the connective tissue to take you there. So this is talking about one of the kind of main center ring of the power fantasy and how she over time opened up a path to hell and kind of took on the powers of the infernal. It just skips too many steps to tell that story. And so it just feels like I don't ever get the full force of it. What I learned from talking to my friend Robert Secundus is that a lot of the things about that are religious theory in this issue about a hell that is always empty, because if there is a heaven, that means hell is always empty, is like a real actual philosophical train of thought that's happening in the world of philosophy right now. And that's really interesting. But it just felt like it stopped being a story. Like it just was interstitial slices of Gillen commenting on the philosophy of heaven and hell. And we didn't really get anything to elucidate what happened in the second summer of love or tell us anything about the characters themselves. So this was deeply, deeply disappointing to me. And this is the Kieran Gillen stuff that I tend to get turned off by. Like, I want to see it being driven by character. I think he's good at telling a mystery through expressing it with his characters. When he just goes into mystery world building mode, he does sometimes lose me. Power Girl. This was the last issue of this Power Girl run, which I think is appropriate because I think it ran its course. I think we got all we were going to get out of it. And, but I will say David Baldion, colored here by Romulo Fajardo Jr., just extraordinary. Like, I've never seen Baldion's stuff look this good. He's doing new things with dimensionality and with shadow and for making his character. They just all feel so bold and dimensional, and like they have heft in their space. But Leah Williams' script is just a mess, and I think that that's been a problem with this whole series. Like, it's so ready to make the easy joke that those times that we spent setting up the easy joke, we could have spent getting to know Power Girl. And right to the end here, we don't. Great letters, by the way, by Becca Carey. Just looking at this page, I'm like, oh, the letters are so easy to read. I love the placements of the balloons. I love how this one is slightly behind that Steele's arm there. Really great. But yeah, just there's so many moments here that Leah Williams like went for the gag, and I was like, this is our final issue with Power Girl. Do you want to give us anything real about this character, or are you just going to go for the gag? And she went for the gag, and you know, you live by the sword, you die by the sword. Your series got canceled at issue 20. That's a good run. Better than it would have done at Marvel. I did like this cast of characters a lot. Hopefully somebody who knows what to do with them can write them at some point. Really great art, though. David Baldion's art is really great. Predator versus Spider-Man. Here's me saying something you wouldn't have expected me to say. I friggin' loved this Benjamin Percy Predator nonsense comic book. It was everything I want from a Spider-Man comic book. Really, really, really incredible art from Marcelo Ferreira. Great inks from Jay Leeson. Colors from Frank Dermata. Letters from Clayton Cowles. It's set in an indeterminate time in Spider-Man's history. It was just what I want from a Spider-Man comic, which is that he's there to do good and try to like solve a mystery and get to the bottom of something. The Predator stuff is creepy and bloody. I think they pushed the boundaries of how bloody a Marvel comic book without a polybag can be. Some of the newspaper stuff was a little, I could take it or leave it. Like Jonah Jameson, basically they're playing it like it's past Spider-Man, but they're also playing it like it's in the present day. So Jonah Jameson mostly is running a website, but then the power goes out. So he's like, God damn it, today we're going to print newspapers, which was a strange beat that it spent way too many pages on, which probably for me held it back from being like a 4.5 or 5 out of 5 star comic book. The art is incredible. I love the paneling. I love the way that Spider-Man was drawn. And I like the building tension of like, it's a horror movie. Like Predator is a scary movie. And I feel scared. I feel scared for Spider-Man, for MJ. It does feel like Spider-Man's in over his head here. And I'm very eager to read the next issue. I actually, I said, you know what? I'm not even going to try to catch up on Rat City. This is issue 13 of Rat City, written by Erica Schultz, art by Z Carlos, colors from J. David Ramos, and letters by Erica Schultz. I don't know if that's real. That might be an error on the credits page. And I was like, you know what? I love the art in the first issue. It spawned 2099, more or less. It has no connection to the main Spawn title. Let's just jump in and read this issue. And you know what? It was really good because it was actually introducing like a whole side character. So this was basically a whole new number one, and you didn't really need to know anything about Spawn. It introduced a lot of supporting characters who I immediately had an emotional connection with, and some of them meet some very untimely fates. And I was like surprised. Like I thought that they were the characters that I was going to get to know and love. And so when bad things happened to them, it really took me back. The weird thing was that it only had like one page of the current day Spawn, and it kind of made sense in context. But then we switched from the focus on the main character that this issue mostly is focused on onto that Spawn and get his like interior monologue per page. And I was like, whoa, I don't know what's happening at all here. But honestly, it made me interested to keep reading this book. Like Erica Schultz is doing a great job. I kind of want to go back and catch up on it now, but maybe I'll just keep reading from issue 13. This is a Spawn book you can read on its own. If you want to read Spider-Man 2099, but as Spawn, this is the book, and you don't have to read any other book because there's no other book that goes with it. A few months ago was thinking maybe I will read Rick and Morty Rickomania, because I do like Rick and Morty. The Tiller show, Siobhan Thompson, who's part of Dimension 20's Intrepid Heroes, often writes for Rick and Morty. But then I'm so happy I didn't, because there's a finite amount of time in my life, and even though I like Rick and Morty the TV show, I just do not care about wrestling. And the idea of reading a whole Rick and Morty comic book all about wrestling jokes, it would have been lost on me. Sometimes we can make choices that are good for us. I do want to track down this Keenspot comic digitally, Robot and Girl. I keep saying I want to read a Keenspot comic. This to me looks like the most interesting one. Like it looks like the one that I would probably enjoy the most. But I don't think, does Keenspot do digital? Robot and Girl number 7. I don't know if they do digital. So anyway, I know I've been saying for months and months that I would finally read Keenspot if one of you told me you read Keenspot. And then one of you finally told me that you do read Keenspot. So now I've got to figure out how to read Keenspot. I guess that will be my research project for next week. Oh, there's a keenshop.com shop. Okay. And this costs $11? Are you joking? And that's for a physical version? Maybe it's New Zealand dollars, but that's still too many. Okay. I'll look more deeply at the Keenspot website, but It seems like it's all physical books right now. Moving on. Okay. Risk. This was the one I really wanted to read. So this was the black box comic. I tried to find them on Global Comics. That wasn't there when I searched for it. At least I don't think it was, because it's written by D.G. Chichester and it looked really, really cool. Female protagonist, really neat looking colors. So I think I looked for this one thinking it was that other one. And then when I said I looked for the other one, I couldn't find it. I was thinking about this one. So I'm sure Black Box seems like they add things to the Global Comics on a little bit of a delay. So I'm sure we'll get there on this, but I'm really excited to read it. Sabretooth the Dead Don't Talk. This was the final issue, number 5 of this Frank Thierry and Michael Sta Maria series. Michael Sta Maria is an art star waiting to happen. Actually, he's happening currently, colored here by Rachel Rosenberg and letters from Joe Sabino. I think Sta Maria has a very pleasing Lionel Yu quality to him, but that he handles action a little bit better. I really like his faces and his likenesses. What was weird about this issue is like we have this bad guy, the Crocodilian, that pretty much is just Moon Knight but a crocodile. And Thierry chooses this issue 5, to do a full origin story for him, which is a choice to do in the last issue of your miniseries. And then after this ends and like leaves Sabretooth actually in a kind of interesting place that I still found somewhat intriguing, like tacks on this epilogue with Wolverine to be like, and that's, I was always been wondering what Creed was up to or something like, and it just felt like weirdly shaped. Like, why was this finale of the series starting with an origin story for a villain and ending on Wolverine? I don't know. It just, honestly, this is one of my favorite Frank Thierry series, even though it still managed to fridge a woman in the middle of it back in the 1900s, even though it had tons of superpowered characters, which felt egregious to me to fit into this period of the Marvel Universe. It actually really worked. And I think like as throwback Sabretooth stories go, it really worked for me. Some people are talking about wrestling. Look, I followed wrestling back in the, I don't know, early 90s. I was really into Glorious Ladies of Wrestling, Glow. But I also followed the WWF. I had trading cards. I had action figures. I just, to me, it's just TV, right? It's just stories on TV. And to me, I watch drag. Wrestling is drag. Wrestling is drag. It's heightened gender expression done for show. It's drag. And I watch Drag Race instead because I'm just more interested in Drag Race. But so no, I haven't read Do a Powerbomb. People have recommended it to me, and I do love Daniel Warren Johnson. But in the same way that Murder Falcon totally hit for me because it's about bands and what it's like to be a musician and all that. And that is who I am in my life. And so it really hit for me. I kind of was like, well, I don't want to have a negative feeling about Daniel Johnson because I just don't find wrestling very amusing. So I didn't read it, but people keep telling me it's great. So maybe I'll go back and read it at some point, all my spare time. All right. Now I finally get to talk about Solomon Kane. Y'all, you need to go on to Amazon.com or to your local comic book store and start picking this book up now. Patrick Zurcher is writing it. Patrick Zurcher is drawing it. Patrick Zurcher is coloring it. Richard Starkings at Comicraft and Tyler Smith, who's a friend of the channel, are lettering it. This is extraordinary. So it's got the vibe of like a classic swashbuckling adventure book, like kind of like the Three Musketeers, but it's got this guy, Solomon Kane, who's kind of just this, he's on his own path. He's maybe he's a mercenary, maybe he's an adventurer. And he winds up on a ship where he gets in a brawl and he inadvertently, or kind of advertently, but not with any malice, kills somebody who has an interesting mystery that he unfolds a little bit, Solomon Kane. And so Solomon Kane starts tugging on the strings of the mystery. It brings him to Venice, and it brings him and this person that he meets up with in the ghetto of Venice, then to Africa. It's so intriguing. It's the perfect combination for me of like grounded swashbuckling and also supernatural, because there's clearly supernatural elements to it. The art, I mean, come on. The art is so amazing. The colors, the layers of color that Patrick Zurcher is doing here are just absolutely incredible. The likenesses, the facial acting. I love that his Solomon Kane is almost a couple of real people. I see a lot of Nicolas Cage in his face, but he's not just Nicolas Cage. I think Cillian Murphy, I think there's a little bit of that in his cheekbones and the set of his mouth, but he's not all that. He's just a distinct person that really acts. I feel like it's got the right amount of dialogue. It's a lot of dialogue. It takes me like 15 or more minutes to read this issue, but never in a, oh, this is too long, please stop, in the way that I was with Magic. The perfect amount. It made me go back and reread the first issue. It made me linger on every panel, all of the art. Look at the beautiful art of the ship and the ocean, the ground behind it. He didn't have to draw all that, you know, like he didn't need to put in all those little tiny details of every little bit of this island, but he did. And just the way that that's like ghostly through the mist of the sea in the background, and then Solomon Kane talking to this woman, it's just amazing. Highest possible level of craft. One of the best comic books I've read this year. If you're into, I know it's a Robert E. Howard character, but it's so different than Conan. If you're into anything at all of that, if swashbuckling is a keyword that makes you excited, you will like this book. I recommend it so highly. And who knows? It might wind up sucking. It might be one of those things where I'm giving it too much credit now, and then in the long run, you're going to be like, Krisis, it sucked from the beginning. You just weren't onto it. No, I think it's actually pretty great. Okay. I gave up Spectrum pretty early because it's about fictional music. If you're going to do music in a comic book, I want it to be about real music. I don't read Star Trek. I only watch Star Trek. I read the last issue of String. This final issue of this Paul Tobin series, drawn by Carlos Javier Olivares and color by Sarah Coella and letters by Taylor Esposito. Unfortunately, it kind of soured me on this series. I know I can sometimes sound like I'm a little bit sex negative sometimes, but I'm actually not. I was like a pure sex educator in college, and I really believe in people being able to be frank about sex and sexuality, and that characters in comic books, when they're not at the big two, and even when they're at the big two, have sex and are attracted to people. And String was a series that was very, very frank about its sex. You know, the whole concept of it is this woman can see black lines and blue lines coming between people's bodies, and a black line means that they're connected to somebody else through murder, and a blue line means they are connected to them through physical passion. And so clearly it was a book that was always going to have a sexual element to it, but I just feel like we got to the end here and it never was fully satisfying. It made me actually go page through some collections I have of Joe Casey's comic book Sex, which Joe Casey's a weirdo, and that comic book had like graphic sex at least once per issue, but it was also kind of like a weirdly grounded superhero comic that had some supernatural elements. It kind of is a little bit like Kick-Ass and also criminal, but if they were superheroes and also supernatural and also had graphic sex in every issue. And as I was paging through it, I was reflecting, like, Joe Casey nailed the vibe for me there. Like, it never felt gratuitous because the whole book was about sex, and he didn't do it in this like winking, this is dirty way. He just presented sex as sex. And sometimes it was sex that was appealing, and sometimes it was sex that was disgusting. But it was all presented in a very unflinching way. The way this book did it just, everything about the way that it talked about sex was just so like wink, wink, nudge, nudge, that it felt like I was supposed to be titillated by the way it was hinting at the connections of sex, and that this was a very sexual character without actually grounding it in any real tangible attraction between people. That said, I think that Carlos Javier Olivares was incredible cartooning here. I absolutely could see him drawing some really fantastic books elsewhere. I would probably pick them up happily. Sarah Coella's colors were fantastic. The letters were really good. I think Paul Tobin had an excellent concept with this character and her life and how she gets tangled up in this murder investigation. But I just think that he stuck too much for too many issues on the tee-hee ha-ha quality of it, and like didn't get into the heart of what could have been really interesting about it. I read Superman number 25. It is by Joshua Williamson. Oh boy, that's blown up really big. Oh, no, not you. Oh, there we go. That's so much better. But actually what we want to do is zoom to fit. Where is zoom to fit? Apparently that's where we are right now. Okay. So I read this by Joshua Williamson with a team of artists because they are celebrating the 25th issue of this book, which at Marvel is like turning 100 because the books can't even get to 10 at Marvel, and DC books get to 25 all the time. Art variously by Jamal Campbell, Eddie Barrows, Eber Ferreira, and Dan Mora. Colors by Alejandro Sanchez and Jamal Campbell. Letters by Dave Sharp. What's interesting about this is it kind of brings the Lex Luthor conflict that's been simmering to a head in a few different ways. Like, it turns out that he's not fully a bad guy or fully a good guy, but he set up something evil that now is coming to fore that wasn't entirely his fault, and Superman's got to deal with it, but it also deals with the whole, Superwoman, Lois the Superwoman having powers. It kind of feels like this was invented in whole cloth right in this moment. Maybe I'm just forgetting it being brought up earlier in the rungs. I've been reading it monthly for like over a year now, so some of the stuff is older in my memory, but based on the cover that showed so many different people from throughout the run, I thought that it was going to connect more to things that had already happened, especially with that, what was his name? Dr. somebody that looked like Frankenfurter with hair like mine. He was so cool. I thought it was going to just connect more to the earlier stories. But I think if you wanted to jump in somewhere and kind of just see where this is going and move forward with it, this was a good one-shot issue, which I think is a successful way to do like a slightly oversized 25th, celebration issue, is to just don't use it as an arc ender or an arc beginner. Just use it as its own full story so that people can be attracted to it and pick it up and buy it and enjoy it. So I didn't read Superman The Last Days of Lex Luthor. This is the third and final issue of the series that took 2 years between the first issue and the second issue, but then second issue and third issue came out in pretty quick succession. This is Synap, which I've been reading from Mad Cave. This may have been the final issue. They were a little bit cagey on like if it's ever going to continue or not. I thought it's written by Chris Moses, art by Andrea Giannini. Colors from James O'Freddy, Reed Hinckley Barnes, the letterer. This was maybe the best issue of this book. It really, really worked for me. I think that one of the problems I've been having with it is that it's dealing with these characters who kind of like can drive giant kaiju fighting robots, but there's just one of the robot, and the world powers in the world are trying to put it back together. And so there's been generations of these people who can commune with it and control it. So a little bit of a Mech Cadet U, a little bit Power Rangers, but it's been hard because we see all these characters apart from each other and there's a lineage of them and they've all been numbered, much like Stranger Things with 11 being 11. And it's been kind of hard to track all of their plots, but here their plots all kind of become one plot. And so it was much easier to follow. I love this artwork. It kind of reminds me of Sami Basri, who's just done a few issues of Birds of Prey. Just like everybody's got such a bold line around them and they stand off from the background, but they've got these really great animated expressive faces. The colors are phenomenal, and it's kind of left me wanting more. Like it has this really cool beat where like there's some kind of supernatural intelligence that exists in this liminal space where these people go to like make their connection and drive these robots, and only one person generationally can make the connection at a time. And as they get older and have done it too much, they start to lose the connection, and then the next person ages in. But now we're like saying that like there's something else like lurking there in that liminal space trying to connect them, and maybe that thing might come through and act through them. So it's got like, it's really like a mashup of some elements of Stranger Things along with Mech Cadet U, and I really love it. And I just got so excited that finally it like made sense to me, and all the characters were like all in one place for the first time. And then it was maybe the last issue, so that was kind of a bummer. But actually, if you like those influences and you like this art, I think the art in this was incredibly strong, and I think it's probably going to read better in trade paperback, where it's easier to like track all those characters through all of their scenes and them being separate from each other. But I'm absolutely ready for another arc of this. Just doing a couple quick hellos here to people who came in late. Jean-Remy Argueta, a little bit late, but catching some of the stream, wants to read Solomon Kane, and Hunter Hernandez, one of our regulars who I'm very happy to see, late, and we'll have to watch the beginning later. Hello to everybody. Wow, somehow we were going, it's only 2.5 hours. I thought it was 3 hours already, but we're almost done. So I don't read Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the Saturday Morning Adventures. I dropped Those Not Afraid before the final issue, which to me is the biggest insult that I can pay to a comic book, to drop it with only one issue left, because I just don't think Kyle Starks had anything particularly magical here, and life is short. I also have dropped Ultimate Black Panther, which I will read in collection. I mean, not really collections. I'll still read it on Marvel Unlimited, but I'll probably just wait for each collection to come out and then catch up, because the decompression was just making me rage. And I know my rage is entertaining to you, but I also have to value my life here on this planet. I read the second issue of The Mummy. This is a drop for me in a big way. I kind of forgot halfway through this issue that I had already decided to drop it. And then I was like, why do I hate this so much? And then I looked at my notes. I was like, oh, because you decided to drop it. It's by Faith Erin Hicks, who is a very famous YA author. She is writing and drawing here with colors from Lee Luffridge and letters from Hassan Otsman Al-Hal. And it doesn't, we're 2 issues in and I'm not getting enough Mummy. And it really just feels like the same. It's like a YA kids comic meet cute with a mummy in the background, which honestly is a take you can have on the story of the Mummy. But I just think looking at these Universal Monsters comics from Skybound, I just want more. I want to take it to the extreme. I want the best adaptation that's ever happened. And I just feel like I'm reading like a kid's adaptation of the Mummy from First Second right now, which I don't look down my nose on. My first books that I ever read, and I was a very slow reader when I first started reading, were in Crisis lore. This is true and well known. Kids adaptations of horror classics, and started with Dracula, and I think the next one I read was maybe The Mummy. So like I'm into the idea of that, but to me that's not, I know this is an expectation thing and I should be enjoying this comic for what it is on its own, but if you put it in the context where also James Tynion's Dracula adaptation exists. This just is not what I want from this line of comics. Maybe if I was reading it on its own as its own independent Faith Erin Hicks book, I would be like, oh, this is great. But I can't separate it from its context, unfortunately. And also, unfortunately, I can't read Werewolf by Night because it's red band and it's not coming out digitally. Although I think, did the first one of these finally, the trade? I think the trade came out or is about to come out. So I'll finally get to see if there's going to be a digital version of the trade, in which case I can buy it and read it digitally, even though it's not on Marvel Unlimited, which I will do because I am very interested to read it. This is the last cover I added to the slides, and it looked so cool to me. Wicked Town. It just looks, something about this is really interesting. I like the artwork. I like the colors. I like, why are the birds falling out of the sky, and why is the blood coming to her palms like a stigmata? All of it seemed very exciting to me. I looked it up and I found that it was a Kickstarter, so I don't know if there's going to be a way to get a hold of it digitally. But if a second issue, so a lot of times with these Kickstarter books, just one issue comes out and then it's like a year before another issue comes out. But if there's an issue 2 anytime soon, I will see if I can find it. I'll reach out to the creators because I'd really love to highlight this. It looks really, really cool. I personally, Krisis speaking here, I think if you're going to kickstart your comic, always kickstart a complete story. I know it costs more. I know it's a bigger risk, but like, always do 48 issues. Always tell a complete story. Don't make it an ongoing. I just think kickstarting comics that go one issue at a time, if you're like an independent creator, that's a lot of risk. You got to tell complete stories. Make them OGNs. Make them self-contained one-shots. That's my personal opinion. I don't read The Witcher. This is one of 4, The Bear and the Butterfly, written by Simon Spurrier, who I'm sure will deliver a truly weird Witcher comic. X-Force number 10, Legacy 300. This was the hottest of hot messes. The mess was so hot. It was scorching mess, scalding mess. Written by Jeffrey Thorne, art by Marcus Toe, colors from Eric Arciniega, letters from Joe Caramaga. Here's what I will say that I appreciated about it. Jeffrey Thorne clearly had a plot, and he, like I said earlier, he really did lean into the voices and the veracity of these characters in a way that was really pleasing. They all did feel like themselves, which is something the X-Men line is having a lot of problems with right now. But this story, just the layers of like La Diabla and then Moses Magnum, and then it just was so many layers that had he been given the time and not been canceled at issue number 10, he was going to make it take another 5 or 10 issues. And I'm like, look, I'm all for long-running plots, but this was getting to the point that nothing was really happening per issue, and then all of a sudden everything had to happen in this issue, which just made it messy. I loved the idea of bringing back Moses Magnum as the bad guy, and like the whole plot here was cool, but Jeffrey Thorne and we've seen this already on his Green Lantern. Like, this is a problem we have seen him have on comic books. He's got to just move the thing along. He's good at the character voices. He's got an all-time pro with Marcus Toe writing with him here, but it felt like if he had more smartly paced this and given us more satisfaction at issue 5 and at issue 7 and issue 8, maybe he would have made it past issue 10, or maybe the market forces were just against him. I don't know. There was also a backup story here that was written by Fabian Nicieza to fit in between the raindrops of X-Force 1991, number 25. Art, really good art by Edgar Salazar, and colors by Chris Sotomayor, and letters from Joe Caramaga. I'll say this for this, it's totally unnecessary. They just wanted to throw something extra in this issue. So they got Fabian Nicieza to write basically a story that's about like Cable's past and also the alternate futures that may result from Cable. It's pointless. It never really happens. It's just thoughts to have about Cable while Cable is in a coma. But that said, it's done very well because Fabian Nicieza knows what he is doing. James Abel says, the X-Force team is now over. The few pages of the Cable is the best Cable story we got all year. I'm not going to argue with that. One Wheelchair X says you could tell that with X-Force that Thorne had so much more he wanted to tell, and then he had to get it out all in one go. I mean, the tank reveal. Yeah, the tank reveal just, I kind of was what I thought it was, but I almost missed it. Like, it happened so fast. I was like, oh, that was the tank reveal. Okay. And it didn't seem like it connected to the mystery of who he was all along at all. Who I wanted it to be was Rock Slide. Have like Wrong Slide is Rock Slide, but like that Forge like made him kind of mask that like stabilized his personality. In my head, I had built up this whole guess about that. No, it was just, I mean, I'm not going to spoil it, but it was just who it was. And then it just was, and then we just kept going. And I think that was a lot of the problem with Jeffrey Thorne's plot on this. A lot of it was built up like it was going to be important, and then it kind of was like, no, that just was. But I will say it ended in a good place, and it did some justice to a character I thought had been done some injustice. I think actually, in retrospect, we'll look at this run a little bit more kindly than because we're going to see how terrible the rest of From the Ashes was, and we're going to think this was actually not that bad. But now we come to Jed MacKay's X-Men. This has 2 different artists on it, both Ryan Stegman and CF Villa, with a team of inkers, including JP Mayer, Livesay, and CF Villa, and colors from Eric Arseneda, letters from Clayton Cowles. This was good. MacKay has hit his stride. Like, it's working. And I think the reason it's working is MacKay is doing that thing that I talked about is so great about Peter David, where every time he has one of this menagerie of B-list, C-list characters on panel, he leans into the veracity of what makes that character them. He's writing an extraordinary version of Ileana Rasputin here. He's writing a juggernaut that worked for me. He's funny, he's acerbic, but he's a juggernaut who just thinks as long as he keeps moving, everything will be fine. He doesn't want to stop and introspect. That's who Juggernaut is. He can't be stopped. Nothing can stop him. So of course his solution to every problem is let's just get on with it. I just think that MacKay is doing that for every character in this book. I'm not interested in this plot at all. At all. I don't care about it. I don't think it's interesting. The whole Cassandra Nova, the 3K, keep it. I'm not interested in any of this anti-mutant stuff. Take me back to Krakoa. That said, if we're going to be stuck in this comic book with Jed MacKay and these characters right now, this is the comic book I want to be reading. And I do think it's very successful because every time we flashed one of these characters, Beast, Magneto, the new lady with the wings, Cyclops, Temper, no matter who we switch to, there's always a sense that we are getting something that could only come from their voice. Psylocke, every time we pan to one of them, it's a unique version of them. And that is the problem I'm having with the rest of the X-Men line not doing. And then the final issue of Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. Then we are at the end, folks. I made it. So glad we made it. Look how far we've come now, baby. Might take a lifetime. Sometimes I'll have a certain song in my head and I think, what if Cher sang that song? Like, it would take a lifetime. Anyway, love Cher. So we made it. And that's the show. So here's the thing. I have so much comics to catch up on, but I also have to get the DC poll out, and I'm very, very, very behind at getting the DC mapping posts up on CK, although I've already fully defined, we already have the list and we put it out for public consultation. You missed all this because I wasn't doing shows. I actually released the whole list of the DC most wanted poll for public consultation so people could find the problems, and people found so many problems, which is a good thing. I mean, the problems aren't a good thing, but it's a good thing they found them. And so that happened on Reddit and on near mint condition Discord. And so we did that. And so we made all the corrections. Now there's 600 books. It's going to include all of Vertigo, and that's launching in a week, and I have not put up any of the mapping on CK yet. So I don't know if I'm even gonna have enough time to do that this week. Heaven only knows. But that's what I'll mostly be doing. But I do need to also catch up to the present day of books. So I have to do April 30th, May 7th, May 14th, May 21st. So that's 4 behind I am. So this should have been the May 21st show. I think we're just going to have them on this regular bat time and regular bat channel as I work through the books. There's a chance that there could be a random stream if I catch up on a whole week's worth of books and I can squeeze it in on a Wednesday or a Thursday. That possibly could have. So I'm hypnotized by how good my hair looks right now. This is amazing. This is nothing. I literally didn't even wash it last night. I just wet it and put it back in its little bun. And no product or anything. This is just how gorgeous my hair is. The one part of me that there's been no effort put into today. So there could be a random one showing up. More likely, though, we're just going to be a month behind until later in June when I have the chance to catch up more, which honestly is fine because books are cheaper when you're a month behind. Sometimes they're already on DC Ultra, which is great. And even if they're not already on DC Ultra, they sometimes they're just cheaper on Comixology. The price goes down after a couple of weeks. So I don't think I'm on anybody else's channel this week. I don't think we have a near mint condition this week. I guess it could be Marvel Catalog on Thursday, but we've been doing them the first week of the new month, and so the last week of the prior month. Next week will be the kickoff of the DC poll, but you will see me here again next Sunday, hopefully before then. So I thought for fun, since I haven't seen you for a while, I would do a song that people have actually been asking for. And you're like, well, how could people be asking for it? They don't know your songs. But this is the song that is the intro to the show. End with me. Yeah, DC reprint results, Cruel Angel, are this week. I'm not involved. I'm in the background kind of looking on, but I'm not really involved in the data. That's all Jim, BFF Nut. So, but it seems like it's going really smoothly, and results will be later this week. That is true. So I haven't played any guitar for a couple of weeks because I've been so busy. So there's no telling where this is going to go. We're just going to see what we see. Okay. And we all know that I have to turn off the comments because I will keep reading your comments. So I've been Krisis. You, of course, can find me here on this channel. If you haven't already, like, subscribe, do the things. Only because I'm starting to experiment with doing more like off-cycle videos. And if you're not liked and subscribed and notification belled and all that stuff, you'll just miss it. So there is going to be a video coming up in the next month or two with One Wheelchair X. I'm so excited about that. I'm sure I will have some things to say about the DC poll once it's out, although probably not as much as I have to say about the Marvel poll, because I know a lot more about Marvel than DC. Crushing Krisis is slowly catching up on new releases post, so I will get back to present there eventually, and we'll have DC mapping there as well. And so this is called End With Me. I've told a little bit of the story before when I played its sibling song, Curves Sketched in Letters. This was written to be the soundtrack of a book by an author and literary agent named Eric Smith, who's a very good friend of mine who lives in Philadelphia. And his book was called Textual Healing. And I read the book, and this song just came out fully formed. And it's called End With Me. And it's very much about his book. It's very much, if you've read the book and you've heard the song, you'll be like, oh, they go together. And again, I have not sang or played guitar for weeks now. So I'm just trying to lower expectations. All right. Well, it'll either be good or it won't. Okay. We could do better. I lost it. Remind me, I forgot what I need to find. Don't know if I know the words that will remedy. Cross off each worry, across the Rubicon. Things I said, I don't mean the words that come out of me. I said, let's pretend when I need reality. I hope that your voice will suspend me, protect me, wrap it around me, swim for eternity. I'll watch the hours go by and get better. You pack your bag, paint the clouds, paint them red ends, then you leave. That's the way the story goes. Please won't you stay with me this time, and with me, and with me. I say it's sugar, to meet you it's sweeter than anything I could have said that was truer. You laugh like you mean it, but I don't need anything, I can't define it, so I just concede it. I follow you, follow me, I float across the Rubicon to find you, to find you, to find you. I'll watch the hours go by, get better. You pack your bag, paint the clouds, paint them red, and then you leave. That's the way the story goes. Please won't you stay with me this time, and with me. Midnight, writing these words that mean nothing. They cannot measure the distance between you and me. From New York to the clouds, you turn colors. I'll paint the sky red, then retreat, recede. I'll follow you, I'll swim across the Rubicon to find you, find you, find you, find you, and I'll watch the hours go by and get better. You'll pack your bags, paint the clouds, paint them red, and then you leave. That's the way your story goes. Please won't you stay with me this time? Stay with me. Please won't you stay with me this time? And with me. And with me. Mm-hmm. Well, you can tell I haven't played guitar or sang for a few weeks, but that is End With Me. I'm so happy to finally share it with you on the show. It was one I was going to hang on to for a longer time because it is one of my absolute favorites. But it felt like if I was coming back from having resolved and repaired and recovered, that what a better song to come back to than that one, which is the song that I begin every show with. So thank you so much for those of you who made time in your day to hang out with me. I know that I haven't been a regular, but you know, the whole point is sometimes you can come back to the things that you do and you don't have to get it perfect every time. Perfect is the enemy of done. So until I see you next, I've been Krisis. And if you are out in the world or just alone in your home, please try to treat yourself as kindly as you're treating other people. This is a tough world to be in right now. And so people really need your love and respect. And that starts with you, but extends to all the people in your life of every gender, every color, and people that are trans, because trans rights are human rights. Thank you so much for sticking with me. And please, this week, don't have a crisis unless, of course, it's me. Farewell.